In this video, we are talking all about this D23 Ultimate Fan Event Parks panel. What can we expect? What can we not expect? We're going to break down the artwork, the name of the experiences panel. We're talking about all of it. We're breaking it down. We got we got Drew, the Disney dude, with us today, and the Italiano up next on OG55. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of OG55. We got Drew, the Disney dude, back in the house today. We're talking D23 fan event. We got some news today, and we're going to break it down. Drew, it is good to have you back on, sir.
I am happy to be back. It's funny. I feel like I was just talking to you guys, what was it, last month about Tiana's for the length of a movie, and now we're here to talk about what the future of Disney experiences are. So ready to dive into the good and the bad and what we can hopefully expect. So let's do it.
Absolutely. If you could let everybody home know where they could find you on social media.
Yeah, so I'm on I refuse to call it X. I'm on Twitter at Drew Disney Dude and YouTube Drew the Disney Dude. So right there, Drew the Disney Dude. That's me. I'm the Disney Dude.
There he is. He's the Disney dude. And I will be linking all of his stuff down below in the description. And I completely agree with you, Drew. The X, that had to have been the worst branding ever.
I just I don't want to say X, formerly known as Twitter. Like, it just sounds stupid. Like, just call it Twitter.
But. Yeah, see, I have to say it because it naturally rolls off my tongue with my spiel.
It's funny because whenever you said that, my PR brain wants to say, "Oh yeah, X, formerly known as Twitter." Like, I'm okay with saying that, but when people are watching something, it just sounds dumb. So I'm just gonna call it Twitter.
Yeah, and it's funny because he shortened the name to X, but everyone's like X, formerly known as Twitter. So it's longer.
Yeah. And Twitter is still being mentioned. So it's like, was it successful? No, not at all.
Yeah, and when I still talk to people, I just say I made a tweet. Twitter. I just use it as Twitter.
Rather than a post and a repost. Whatever.
Oh god.
I love the platform because it's so great for finding out what's happening currently rather than relying on an algorithm on Instagram to show you something. We're not here to talk about that though. So let's dive into all this D23 noobs.
Absolutely. The Italiano. You can let everybody know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. Well, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yes. Yes.
No.
At Disney George. You can also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
That's hilarious.
What do you mean by that?
All right, gentlemen, let's dive right in. We got this news today. We actually even got some artwork. Okay, this is from the one and only Mr. Scott Gooston, who's amazing. We love Scott. He does a lot of great work.
Scott's a good man. Yeah,
absolutely. So he shared this art with us, and it says here. I mean, move this over so I can kind of see my logos in the way. The 2024 D23 Expo Parks panel is titled, quote, Horizons Disney Experiences Showcase, end quote. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on the Horizons name, and I think it's actually setting Disney up for some issues, but we'll talk about that in a second. And will take place on Saturday, August 10th at the Honda Center. Josh D'Amaro will offer, quote, news and updates about projects around the world and will, quote, will show fans what's on the horizon and beyond. Now, Drew, you are our special guest today. What are your thoughts on this overall? The artwork, the name, how are you feeling it? So what do you think it says about it?
I love the artwork, but quite honestly, I think everyone is overthinking this artwork into literally looking at every single little icon. Like you have California Adventure on the left, Big Thunder Mountain on the right, Hollywood Studios, Earful Tower for Walt Disney Studios Park. I think that this is more of just representing Mickey conducting the Disney parks as a whole. And it's more of literally just artwork rather than necessarily representing what's going to be announced. I mean, yeah, obviously we're going to get announcements regarding Animal Kingdom and Big Thunder Mountain. But I think that the team behind this kind of just took the general idea, knowing some things that are going to come, like the very obvious things like Animal Kingdom and Big Thunder Mountain, for example. And they're like, oh yeah, we could put that on there. Whereas something like Hollywood Studios, it's there, And then I kind of went to like, could that be, you know, Hollywood studio surprises? Or is this them literally just putting it on there because it looks cool?
That's a great point. Is it for aesthetically, composition wise for the art, or does it mean something? Because I was actually guilty of that, Drew. I was like going through the art, going, okay, so we got,
I did it first, not to cut you off, but like when this first dropped, I thought that it was going to be everything, and then I'm like, you know, I think this is more of just representing what the showcase is going to be as a presentation itself. And if you look at Mickey, it's kind of teasing the musical aspect of this presentation, which we'll talk about a lot more in a little bit. But it really, to me, screams more of Mickey kind of looking at the horizon of the Disney parks and what's going to be happening over the next decade. And I saw some people talking about this representing Spaceship Earth, but it's clearly the sun. It's either a sunset or a sunrise. And it's going, I think it'd probably be a sunset going down behind, you know, the horizon.
If memory serves me correctly, I think that was the type of logo that they actually used for the Horizons attraction at Epcot.
Yeah, it has like that Epcot, because like the classic lighting for Spaceship Earth was like that orange and blue, so it kind of gives off that vibe. But I guess to answer your question, I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with the announcements. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. We don't know. This thing's in a month from at the time of us recording this. But as art on its own, I think it's absolutely gorgeous and kind of like incorporating that Mickey, PhilharMagic Mickey. I love that vibe because I've always loved that show, and I think it's very underrated. So as art, it's gorgeous. But like I said, we'll talk more in a little bit about what I think about this presentation as a whole.
You know, it's interesting too, because, you know, I think this is the thing too, because Disney kind of knows, like you were saying earlier, Drew, and you're absolutely correct. Disney fans will analyze the artwork, like, and try to make sense of it, right? Like, is this a hint? Is that a hint? I think it's kind of risky, to be quite honest, that they're naming it Horizons. And then that it's even inspired by the attraction, the style, because you're setting the expectation, whether right or wrong, you're setting the expectation with fans like, oh, so you're telling me there's a chance, you know? Yeah. And when he gets on that stage and they don't announce anything for, like, you know, Horizons coming back or anything like that, I feel like they're sort of setting themselves up for like a disappointment moment where they're kind of like hinting here, sort of indirectly, Horizons, something might be coming, and then they're not going to do that, and then they're going to have a problem on their hands.
See, I actually never really put two and two together of that, to be honest with you. Okay. When I first saw the poster, I took it as like a play on words of like what Drew was actually saying, like, okay, now the future of the Disney parks, we're going to look over the horizon, and it's like, what are we going to expect? So being that they're going to use the term Horizons, it's like, okay, well, let's kind of play off of that because we have an old, outdated, retired attraction called Horizons. So let's kind of utilize that as our main focus tool of how we can actually look at this poster. And honestly, for anyone who ever thought that we're going to get Horizons back, get over yourself, because we're not.
Yeah. But, it's not going to happen, right?
But I will say, honestly, now the opposite of Drew, though, what I see when I look at this is they're just going to go full steam ahead. Like everything that's being showcased on this poster, they're going to announce everything under the sun, no pun intended. And we're going to be so satisfied with everything. Okay, now let's talk about what's really going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. Now, Drew, you have an interesting, I really want to touch upon what you were kind of mentioning pre-show. Yeah, about the music. I'll let you kind of explain that, because that's something I didn't pick up on, and I think that's kind of an interesting take.
Yeah. So one thing about me is whenever stuff drops, I always will like react to it as like just like a fan of these parks. I'm like, oh, that looks so cool, and just like we've known that this presentation is coming and that they have this 12,000 seat venue at the Honda Center, and then I'm like, why do they have this 12,000 seat venue? Is it because they want to announce so many big things that they want to have that many people there in person to react to that? Or are they starting to transition these showcases into more of a musical? And Disney has kind of confirmed that this is not going to be the presentations that, like, for those of you who are familiar with like what we saw in 2015 and 2017, there were so many announcements, and like, if my memory serves me correctly, it really was just announcements. Mm-hmm. But if you go on to X, sorry, I have to call it X. the thing that Disney Parks posted today at 1:00, they said the full programming lineup for D23 is here. This is the part that no one is talking about, and they're literally putting it right in front of our eyes. It says, "Don't miss the Disney Experiences Showcase on August 10th for a live musical celebration of Disney storytelling." They're calling it a live musical celebration of Disney storytelling. So what I'm expecting from this is it's going to be mostly a giant musical. And that's kind of what I think they're leaning into with the art that we're looking at on screen here. It's like Mickey kind of conducting these musical performances. And then we're going to see the announcements kind of sprinkled in. Here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that these announcements are so big, like Beyond Big Thunder. Like if we get concrete details and then we start to see shovels in the ground, which we need. That is what we need. Enough of... I love when they kind of give us like the behind the scenes look of like what they're considering to do, but it's been 2 years. So it's like, at what point do you start to move on to ideas of other things? If that makes sense. Like we don't need any more ideas about Magic Kingdom. Put some shovels in the ground, start building this stuff. It's going to take a while. They're saying it's the largest expansion in Magic Kingdom's history. That's okay. I don't care how long it takes as long as it's done right. Okay. Announce that, the concrete detail. And then if you want to talk about the blue sky stuff, because Josh said at Destination D23 last year, that's something that he's going to do more often. So we're going to get that. That's just part of what Josh wants to do as chairman. But it needs to be for something else. I don't care if it's for Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom, whatever. Do it for something else. Give us the concrete details on what's been talked about for the last 2 years.
And also, too, Drew, to your point, and then I think, honestly, if we were to get those kind of announcements, we would then be, okay, we're fine with the musicals. We're fine with the big, because we're then satisfied. What it's like, oh yeah, here we go. We're gonna redo this, and then, oh, by the way, here's a big musical number, and we're like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
It's like, but also too, because you had mentioned Destination D23, they even did that with the musical numbers in the very beginning of that presentation, where everybody thought it was a hint at Hercules. Something of Hercules was going to come out, because they were singing the whole entire soundtrack, and that was it. They just dropped it off like it was nothing, and we're like, okay, like what's the relevance of that?
You took the thought right out of my mouth, because what I was going to say is I wasn't at D23 Expo in 2022, but I remember watching it with my parents. And I remember when they were talking about Tiana's Bayou Adventure at the time, this was 2 years ago now. Didn't they do a live performance with Anika Noni Rose of Almost There, like with like the little like...
Yes.
So like, I don't know who it is that's making these choices. And I have nothing against the person, but like, these things aren't cheap to go to. I think like most people had to drop $400 to get like the decent seats.
Sorry.
I think most people have to drop like $400 to get into the Honda Center to see these things. So it's like, whenever you're having a giant thing every 2 years, it shouldn't be focused on music. If you want to tie in music, like Disney Parks music, right? And do original performances of Disney Parks music tied into the announcements, I think that's one thing. But like, no one's spending $400, a hotel, airfare, and a week of their life to go watch a musical number after like what you said with George, which some of these announcements, and they're just lackluster. Myself, I was at Destination D23 last year, which is the much smaller version. I was at Contemporary, and you guys will know this, but when they did the Muppet stuff was a fun idea, but it was so overdone that I remember I even talked to Scott Gustin at the time, and I'm like, what? Like, I was there with like all of them at that little after party that night when they brought out Figment for the first time. This was last year. And we were like, what is this? Is this supposed to be news and announcements? Or are they just wanting to put on a performance for us? And I feel like they're missing the mark of why people want these things. Because like I was saying earlier, if you look back at 2015 and 2017, there were so many big concrete announcements. And that's what we started to link with these presentations. Like D23 got its reputation, and D23 is what it is today because of those massive presentations we saw 10 years ago. And they've taken that step away from these big concrete details, at least, recently from like 2019 after. So it's been, 5 years now of very mediocre presentations, in my opinion. Like, yeah, there's been some nice announcements in there and some fun surprises, but these should be major things. Especially this year, now that there's 12,000 seats. So when their main tweet is saying that this is a live musical celebration, and even the art is showing Mickey conducting, it's like, what is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be the news and announcements that we want and have been waiting so long for? Or is it
and especially too, because I was actually looking at some of the other panels and venues that are going to go on at the Anaheim Convention Center.
Mhm.
Some of them are music related, which is great, which is perfect. Leave
Keep
it
it
there.
Yeah.
Leave it there.
Yes. Yes.
We don't need it in the parks panel. Let it be solely about the parks, because they even did that as the opening number when they were announcing Happily Ever After was returning at Walt Disney World, where Jordan Fisher came out on stage and they did a whole complete different rendition of Happily Ever After, which was cool. But again, it's like, I mean, I do enjoy like how Disney does like these production numbers, but there's a time and a place for everything.
Agreed.
And for me, I just want someone to come out on stage and say, hey, guess what? Happily Ever After is returning to Magic Kingdom. We all hoot and holler and applaud. Okay, next announcement. Like, let's, you know.
We would rather have a shorter experiences panel. Like, I'd rather have it just be an hour, but have it an hour of announcements or an hour of tangible things, right? And the other issue that they come across too with this musical element is like you were talking about, George and Drew, about like the Hercules thing. They did this whole Hercules thing, but no Hercules announcement. Or even the Muppet stuff.
Yeah,
they trot the Muppets out, but we didn't get a Muppets announcement.
I will say, supposedly there was supposed to be a big Muppets announcement at the very end of that presentation. Didn't happen because of, I remember there was that Disney Plus series, I forgot the name of it, but because it flopped so hard, it was pulled last minute. Now, are we ever going to know these things for certain? No. But like, it still didn't happen though, to your point, Chris. So that's where it doesn't land. It doesn't land. And then you have, you know, look, you have a company like Universal, right? Who's building a whole other park. And I don't think Disney needs to build another park because I think each company needs different things, right? So we don't need a fifth park, but I think what they do need to do is like this Beyond Big Thunder stuff and really give us these, like, you know, big lands, big attractions, you know. But if you're going to go in there on the heels of Universal having Epic Universe and the thing in Texas and the thing in Vegas and all these things, right? And you're going to get on the D23 stage and give us just maybe a few things, but a lot of musical numbers. That's not going to go over well with fans. I am telling you, right? Josh D'Amaro will have a major PR mess on his hands if that's what he's planning on doing. I mean, these announcements, if he only announces like one or two things at this expo and the rest is music, I agree with you guys. I think these announcements better be earth shattering.
But I will say this too, and I'm going to blame the fans on this, and I don't care if I get heat for this or not.
Cancel George.
Canceled.
but this is like this is like a little pet peeve of mine, is when I'm at these events. Now, I'm not saying for people to be rude or belligerent or disrespectful, nothing like that. But if you're going to go nuts and you're going to applaud and go gaga over these musical numbers, but then you're going to walk out of the arena and then go on social media and bitch and moan and complain, then don't applaud. Don't act like you're all hyped up and excited. It's like, if show that you're not interested, because maybe, just maybe, they'll take some notes and say, oh, you know what? We're not getting a really good response from the audience. Because if they are really going by of how they're reacting to what they're producing, then maybe they'll take a look at it. But if everyone goes all nuts and hyped up for these musical numbers that have no relevance to anything, but then you're going to walk out and you're going to go on Twitter or you're going to go on Instagram or whatever, you're going to be like, oh, Disney did this. How could they? Like, they completely like destroyed the parks panel. Well, you're the same person that was just in there clapping and applauding like everything was all well and dandy. And the fact that they and Drew, to your point, I mean, it's one thing that in the presser to say, hey, we're gonna have music here, okay, cool, but to have conductor Mickey in the
Mickey
art,
says all we need to know, and it's making me very nervous, quite honestly. I just like George was saying, there's a time and a place, right? When you have the Anaheim Convention Center, that's where you do these things. The Honda Center is specifically being added this year for the first time to be able to hold 12,000 people for 3 massive presentations. Like I was saying earlier, when people are spending so much time and money to be here, I don't care about a musical. And like I was saying earlier, just to like add on it even more, I literally remember last year sitting at Destination D23. I was with my friend Zach, who runs Boardwalk Times. Good friend of mine. He's super cool.
Yes.
We were looking at each other and we're like, what is happening? Like, I don't care that Fozzie Bear is here when nothing is being announced that we've been hyped up for. And I think that, like you were saying earlier, Chris, kind of like with Disney kind of causing this, I feel like it's multiple things. Like what George was saying with like the fans. it doesn't necessarily help that the fans are buying these expensive tickets and that these things are selling out so quickly, because that says to Disney, oh, well, there's demand for this. So that allows them to keep charging as much as they want. But then when Disney starts to hype things up, even this art that we're looking at right here, it's a perfect example, it's just a natural reaction to see that and be like, ooh, that's so exciting, because you have all of the castles there and all these things. And then that's going to naturally make people want to dive into it. When personally, I don't think this art is related to what we're going to get announcement-wise, besides Mickey being here. But just like I literally remember being disappointed at Destination D23 in 2021 and last year in 2023 because it was so much of this performance, and I just feel like they're trying way too hard to put on a good show. And if they were just to focus on announcements, it would naturally be a good show. That's my take on it.
They should take cues from Kevin Feige, because Kevin Feige is the king of hyping up the fans at these conventions. And if you just get in there and do the Kevin Feige thing and drop these big bombshell announcements, you don't need to do this whole song and the dancing, like literally song and dancing. Just get there and just drop banger after banger announcement. Oh, here's Beyond Big Thunder. Boom. Here's Pandora. Here's more concept art for Disneyland Resort. Boom. Just drop these bangers.
Yeah.
Like you said, Drew, no one needs to see, Step in Time performed. Like, I don't need to see that. You know what I'm saying? Go ahead, George.
As the UK people would probably say, we want bangers, not mash. So for me, but I think we can all agree that we are very optimistic of what is going to be showcased at this presentation. But at the same time, we probably kind of have our hesitation as well. It's like, because with every little thing that we're seeing, we're like, uh-oh, is this going to be history repeating itself, especially under Josh D'Amaro, because he has a rapport that every time that he hypes something up of this nature, it always comes short.
And here's the risk with that. For Josh particularly, because right now is kind of what's the word for it? It's an important time for Josh, right? Because he's on the short list.
It's his legacy. He has to build a legacy.
Exactly. It's legacy, and he wants to be the next CEO. I mean, he's on that short list for CEO. So if he gets on that stage and he does a lot of blue sky stuff, musical numbers, and it's really short on announcements, fans aren't going to be happy. And fans are going to take to social media. They're going to complain. And that's not a good look for Josh, especially right now. You're trying to be CEO. You can't drop a dud at the expo. You got to deliver. And here's the other thing, too. If he understands that, and he gets on that stage and throws all these announcements at us, like every announcement and the kitchen sink at us, okay? Because he wants that job as CEO. He wants to resonate. He wants the applause. Is he going to follow through with it, though? That's the other thing.
OG, don't give him any ideas, because then we might get a production number of Be Our Guest.
Right, exactly. With a literal kitchen sink, right?
Yeah, but it's funny, though, because I was fortunate enough to be at the Tiana Media event, and they had a little deeper showcase where there was 500 people there. And they had a pre-recorded video from Josh, and he was saying the Disney Experiences showcase is going to be unlike anything we've ever done. I was like, oh, they're getting serious here. And then this comes out today, and I'm like, oh no.
So that's what he's
saying. He's saying it's going to be unlike anything they've ever done because they've never tied announcements into a musical before.
That's fascinating.
What if they actually make the announcements in musical form? What if they just come out and they just say, we have some news for you. It's coming out today.
Right, let me start writing this down and we'll get this copyrighted really quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just like, man, because kind of what you guys were saying, there's a time and a place for the music. And I think back to the musical performances that I loved as a fan of these parks, first and foremost, the Rogers, the musical performance, right?
Oh yeah.
That was perfect. But that's because it tied into the announcement. And it's we wanted to see what this is going to be about. So if this is just coming to my mind because it's something that I really wanted to happen and it got canceled. But the Main Street Theater here was going to be right behind Main Street, and we were going to get those Broadway shows. So if they were yeah, we're bringing that back, and then they did a musical number for one of the shows that was going to be in there, that's
completely different.
Yeah. But like we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, whenever they put the music in front of the announcements that everyone's there for. And here's another description on Disney Parks blog. I love the guy that wrote this article. Nothing against him. I know he's just doing his job. But it says, Josh D'Amaro will welcome fans as he takes the stage with surprise stars and special guests for a live celebration of the music and creativity that power our stories. And of course, news and updates about projects in development around the world.
Yeah,
This
see,
is-
why would you put that on the back end of the
Yes,
announcement?
I was just about to say that. Why is that the second thing? No, bad.
Yeah, it's like, and it's like musical and storytelling, the whole thing. Oh, and by the way, there'll be
By the
some
way,
announcements.
yeah.
Oh, by the way, because we kind of literally have to announce these things. Oh yeah, we'll do that too. It's like, no, this should be. It should say like surprise stars and special guests with major groundbreaking reveals for Disney experiences around the globe, complete with music to complete it all. Like, I don't like it.
Oh man. So Drew, I want to ask you a question. So okay, so we've had the past few. I would say the past few expos have been pretty disappointing overall. You know, they haven't really been landing. It's they've gotten a lot of criticism for this blue sky stuff, right? Okay, let's just say hypothetically we get a lot of that this time, right? Hopefully not, but let's just say that happens. Where are you at? Does that change your perception? Like, is it time for maybe Josh to step down and maybe be replaced, or where do we stand then? Like as a fan community, like what do you think that we should?
The thing is I kind of touched on it earlier. I feel like no matter what Disney does now, people still eat up what Disney does. So why would Disney change what they're doing? You know, Splash Mountain into Tiana's Bayou Adventure has been the most controversial retheme, you know, but then all the merchandise comes out in the preview start and everyone's talking about it. So it's like,
right,
is Disney going to care about taking out one of the most iconic rides of all time when Tiana's is, getting this attention? And like, I know a ton of the negativity was because of the POV, and it did get a ridiculous amount of negativity towards it, but like, people are still showing up. The virtual queue is filling up. So it's like all these things we always talk about this stuff, but like, as long as we keep supporting these things, and I know we're talking about something that's happening in a month, for all we know, we could get groundbreaking announcements mixed in with music, and it could be the best thing they've ever done.
Yeah, hopefully
that's what we get. But like you were saying earlier, Chris, the stakes are really high right now, not just because of the next, successor to Bob Iger as CEO of the Walt Disney Company, but like Universal. I mean, you talked about this too. Epic Universe is opening, between spring and summer of 2025, and that's a 100-acre theme park with, I think, 12 attractions. And the whole like idea of Epic Universe kind of goes back to Disneyland, like with these like lands being like, their own thing. And I think that Universal is on the same level of Walt Disney Imagineering with their storytelling at this point, because Universal Creative has so much ex-Imagineer talent that has gone over there. So we've seen them kind of catch up at this point. And like you were saying earlier, I mean, I know we're kind of connecting all of our same thoughts here, but like, Disney does not need a fifth park by any means. I'm a firm believer of work on what you have now, reimaginings, transformations, expansions, all that fun stuff. I'm okay with the fifth park, 20, 30 years from now. But like, the stakes are really high, like you said, and if this doesn't deliver, it's like, where does the tide start to turn? Because I feel like Josh himself, this is something that I'll never forget. Back in 2021, I was at IAPA. IAPA is a massive theme park amusement expo. It stands for the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions. It's out here in Orlando every single year. 40,000 people a year come here. It's everything you can imagine under the themed entertainment industry, from arcades to theme parks to water parks. Quite literally everything. It's a blast. One of the first times I ever got to talk to Josh in person was at IAPA in 2021, because I got out of my Uber as he was getting out of his van with his team, and we were going up the escalator at the same time. And I was there an hour early because I wanted to be at the very front, and I just started to talk to him, and he's like, I hope you'll be at Destination D this weekend, because I'm really not talking about like a lot of news today, and this is kind of just more of like a general thing as we're coming out of COVID, talking to professionals in the industry. At the time, I was like 18, so I was like very young to be at a IAPA thing. But I remember at that presentation, he was kind of talking about Disney getting the train back on track. And even back almost 3 years ago now, he was talking about getting the train back on track. The train is back on track now.
Yeah.
Now this train needs to start rolling down the track. Like this train needs to start going. So it's like, if people stop supporting what Disney is doing, then like George was saying earlier, that's what sends the signal. People have to speak with their wallets. But like, I love this company more than anything, and I love these parks more than anything, and I want these parks to be so successful, and I want to have these new shows and new rides. And I know they always talk about it, but they have to put the money where their mouth is. And if they do these big things, then yes, I will. I mean, I'm going to continue to support, Disney parks, because that's just what I have the emotional attachment to over Universal. Epic Universe might start that emotional attachment for me. But kind of like to answer your question and to wrap it all up, yeah, the stakes are high and they have to deliver. when you have a 12,000 seat venue with ticket prices more expensive than ever, that's going to make people's expectations naturally go up, and you have to deliver on those expectations. Now is the time, and if they don't, it's going to be nasty.
Well, and another thing too, and I've mentioned this quite some time on the channel, and nothing against the international parks. I do know we'll probably get some announcements with Disneyland Paris because of what they're going to do with World Adventure. Yeah. Yep. Maybe. But and even with the Disney Cruise Line, with the new ship, going to be owned and operated by OLC and what have you, that's fine, which I'm very excited for, by the way. I can't wait for that. But to get more news out of Shanghai and Hong Kong, I'm not saying that I wouldn't want them to get anything new, but it's like Shanghai already got Zootopia. Hong Kong just opened up Frozen. And if they give us a lot more than what they just got, and they're going to leave the domestic parks by the wayside,
that would be malpractice, George, because you're talking to the domestic fan base at D23 basically.
Yes.
So if you get out there and you give them a bunch of Shanghai, a bunch of Hong Kong, and believe me, those parks are great, and their fans deserve awesome stuff too. But like you said, George, they just got some really awesome stuff. Exactly. Time and a place. And here's the other thing too. They're talking constantly about turbocharging these parks. So if you're going to talk about 60 billion and turbocharging and all this stuff, then you have to deliver with some kind of like plan for that. The number means nothing without some sort of plan. Like, I don't care about 60 billion. You could say 60 bajillion. It doesn't really matter if there's no plan attached to that number. It means absolutely nothing. I hope they understand that, because if he gets on that stage, now look, I'm sure he'll announce some stuff. I'm sure there'll be some announcements here.
I know that they have some big stuff up their sleeve, but I think it comes back to how big do the announcements have to be to justify a 12,000 seat venue with these ticket prices? I know I keep coming back to that, but like, that's Disney setting that expectation. It's natural to expect a big thing when this expo gets bigger every single year and the prices keep going up and up. The announcements have to deliver on that, in my opinion.
But to your point, now you just brought it up again with the ticket price. See, now this is where Disney can justify having those big musical numbers, because what they can come back and say is, oh, well, you paid an arm and a leg for these tickets. So that's the same price that you would maybe pay for like a full-on 2.5 hour, 3 hour Broadway musical.
But that's tone deaf. That's not why people go to the
that's
expo.
not why people, but I'm saying that's why Disney would say, oh, well, that's why we put out those ticket prices, because we're giving you announcements and like they'll dilute it down to that of saying, they'll have that reason of saying, oh yeah, we'll give you announcements, but we wanted to give you this big spectacular, kind of like musical thing to kind of set off of what you paid for. But yeah, you're right. That's not what us fans are there for. If we wanted to go see a musical, would go to a panel that has to do with musicals.
Yeah, Disney on Broadway
they are
panel.
doing. Which they are doing.
So put it there. That makes more sense. So we'll see. Look, and we're speculating. I am rooting for Josh. I hope he hits a home run, because that's good for us fans. It's good for the company, which we all love this company immensely. And so we're rooting for you, Josh, but and when we're critical like this, it's because we're trying to.
We care so much. Yeah,
exactly.
It's not negativity. A lot of people will confuse negativity between constructive criticism and feedback. I'm a big believer on feedback, and that's kind of what we've been talking about this entire time. It's not we're against musicals. It's just you have to do it in the right way. And like you were saying, you guys, you have to understand that you're talking to domestic fans. The majority of people who are going to be here are from, the United States. So they are going to naturally care more about Walt Disney World and Disneyland. And that's something that I hope that Disney is understanding going into this. And if they don't, then, the feedback's going to be there, and it's justified at that point.
Yeah, well said.
If Damara wants to turbocharge, he better eat a full can of baked beans, because I want to see some blasting news coming up.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, okay, let's talk about potential announcements. We'll do East Coast and West Coast, and I'll start with you, Drew. What do you think is the most likely? We'll start with Florida first, right?
Okay.
We'll start with
my home base.
First. Your home base. So, in terms of Florida, the Walt Disney World Resort, what do you think is like the most likely? What, like, in terms of like what gets announced and everything for your resort?
I mean, I think I'll start off with like the most likely, and then followed by just some of my own speculation. The thing that another thing I guess I'm kind of concerned about is they've already confirmed that the tropical Americas is happening. They have those videos of the paper models for the tropical Americas.
Right.
They've shown us that they've gone on the research trips, and something that I haven't even talked about, no one's talked about. But Disney just launched a brand new website called DisneyConnected.com, and there's a Walt Disney Imagineering fact sheet on there. And under a little section where it's talking about the future, it confirms that the tropical Americas is happening because it says Imagineers are already developing the plans for it. And it's I know that they've already talked about this stuff, but they've just said it's a possibility, or we don't have the concrete plans. But I mean, I know they're going to talk about it again, but what will justify them talking about that again, if that makes sense? Because we know it's happening now, but what do you have to talk about to make this exciting? Are you going to give us brand new concept art? But it's already been announced. So how much time do you spend on tropical Americas? Now, what I would love to see is a shock Lion King boat ride coming, behind Festival of the Lion King for Animal Kingdom, a phase 2 type thing. Don't think that's going to happen right now, though. Will it happen down the road? I do think so. But then transitioning over to Beyond Big Thunder, this is where I actually would be okay with them spending a lot of time, because you guys know this. But in 2022, when we got those initial Beyond Big Thunder plans, it showed, Coco, Encanto, and Villains. And now Coco and Encanto are going in Animal Kingdom. And that's why last year they didn't talk about Big Thunder Mountain at all, because that original concept got shifted once Bruce Vaughan came back. And Bruce Vaughan was like, no, we're going to do this. And, you guys, Bruce Vaughan's great. I like Bruce Vaughan a lot. But that's why they didn't talk about it last year, because that plan got shifted. So now that we really have no clue what's going to be in Beyond Big Thunder, maybe besides the Villains Land, because that would still work in Magic Kingdom, I do hope that they finally get some concrete plans revealed for Beyond Big Thunder, where we actually know what's going back there in the largest expansion for Magic Kingdom. I think that is worth talking about for a lot of time, because, like I just said, largest expansion in Magic Kingdom's history, most popular theme park in the world. That deserves a lot of time. So that covers Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom. I do think we're going to get the announcement of a nighttime parade. This isn't my information by any means. A lot of people have been talking about this already. But a daytime/nighttime parade for Magic Kingdom, I think, would be fantastic. Kind of leaning into the entertainment side with Epic Universe opening. I think offering entertainment that can appeal to locals like myself, along with people traveling in 2025, would be a major win for everyone across the board. And that's something that we could have for a decade if it replaces Festival of Fantasy. Maybe something along the lines of nighttime entertainment, Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios. Probably not.
Right after the musical number.
All right, should we just start playing a song and then we'll come back on and talk?
Yeah.
Because that's a preview of them. I should get the Muppets to come in here and perform in my room before we start talking about the next topic.
Exactly.
So that kind of covers my thoughts for Magic Kingdom. New parade. Other people have talked about that. Beyond Big Thunder, Animal Kingdom. Give us some concrete plans for Tropical Americas. Don't talk about it for too long. And then Hollywood Studios. Hollywood Studios is, I think, where I'm most intrigued about, because Hollywood Studios, I mean, it just finished its reimagining in 2020 with the opening of Runaway Railway, but Hollywood Studios still needs a lot of love.
Mm-hmm.
Evan Patel, I know you guys know Evan. Evan's a good friend of mine. I like Evan a lot. He just posted a video in Animation Courtyard earlier, and he's like, "What's going on back here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's kind of like abandoned courtyard."
Absolutely nothing. That's what's going on back here.
It's if you walk in Animation Courtyard right now, it feels like what Walt Disney World as a whole felt like in 2020 when the parks first reopened from COVID. It's that dead back there. But something back there would be really fun. One of those big shock announcements would be great. Yeah. The thing that I know is going to happen at some point, I don't know when the announcement is coming, is Rock and Roller Coaster being reimagined. The announcement that I've been laughing about today that would break the internet is Rock and Roller Coaster, the Eras Coaster, starring Taylor Swift. Oh. That would break the internet, because I was thinking Disney got the rights for her concert on Disney Plus. There's already been conversation there.
Really quick, not to interrupt you.
No,
you're
fine.
You know what would break the internet? If they retheme it to Wreck-It Ralph. Ralph would break the internet.
No, well, that's true. He would. But literally. But you bring up a great point, though, Drew. They have worked a deal out with Taylor, right, with Disney Plus. I mean, she is a mega franchise in and of herself. You would put that in there. Oh my god.
The only thing that I mean, if they do, I mean, I could definitely see Disney's
the appeal
for it. However, I don't know if they would want to. And I know I'm going to sound biased because technically, even with Aerosmith, not a lot of girls would listen to Aerosmith. But I mean, there are girls that do. But I think right now in today's time, Taylor Swift is more geared just towards the younger girls. So I don't know how it would be appealing just to the overall.
Well, what they could do with that space, which I think would be really interesting, is if it's Rock and Roller Coaster. But like maybe they do contracts with big musical groups or soloists like Taylor Swift,
right,
and swap it out every like 5 to 10 years, right? So maybe Taylor Swift, you have a contract with Disney and it's for a 5-year deal, and she incorporates that attraction, and then maybe after that you do like some K-pop group like ITZY or something, or then after that it's something else, right?
You had to throw that in there.
I love K-pop, so I love to see that in there. You know what I'm saying? I would love it, but you can do that, right? Where you can kind of make it almost like, not, I don't want to say flex space because that sounds kind of cheap, but like where you kind of like
commuter hall.
Right, exactly.
Bus stop hall.
but if you kind of like make it where you sign these deals, because the music industry is very kind of fickle. Like what's hot today isn't necessarily hot tomorrow. So you can kind of do that, So I don't know, it'd be kind of fun. Now George has a great idea, Drew. I don't know if you've ever if he's ever mentioned it to you, but like he was thinking like a Goofy movie. Right.
Well, I was gonna throw in another idea for Rock and Roller Coaster. What were you gonna say about Goofy movie though?
So for a Goofy movie, because I'm a '90s kid. I grew up in the '90s. I still love the '90s. Like for me, if I could go back in any time, it would be the '50s and the '90s. I would go back in time for, but to then get like these VIP access that you get invited to a Powerline concert and you have to go through LA and get there in time. But when you're traveling with Goofy,
what could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Not like
and then you're jamming, and then while you're traveling with them, Max has the radio blasting to Powerline music. So you're like listening to Eye to Eye, Stand Out, and I'm thinking, that would be something that I would absolutely love. And also, too, I have to say, they are having another Goofy movie panel at this expo. I am going to do everything I possibly can. I would sell my son to the gypsies to get a seat in that.
Oh, wow. Uh-oh. I hope Josh isn't watching. Josh. Oh, man. What say you, Drew? What's your idea for Rock and Roller Coaster, brother?
I mean, it's not my idea. I think the original person I heard talk about this was Jack Adias on my newscast. Very good friend of mine for the last 7 years. Everyone I'm mentioning, you guys know very well. But Jack and I were talking a couple years ago, and he's like, retheme Rock and Roller Coaster to the Muppets, and then move Muppet Vision 3D into where Lightning McQueen's Racing Academy is. Ooh. Make that the Muppets area of the park, and then you can expand Galaxy's Edge to connect with Star Tours. Would they ever do that? Probably not. Does it make sense? Yes.
And that's why they won't do it.
Exactly. But like I think it would be super fun to have like a Muppets coaster. The only thing is like, I always think back to like why the Monsters Inc. thing didn't get greenlit, supposedly. And that's because this is a very intense coaster, with that 60 mile per hour launch. So it's like, how do you tie into whatever theme you have with that thrill of a coaster? So, I mean, Muppets could work, but like, I really would love the idea of having that being the Muppets area, because it could just live on its own back there. And then that would allow for all that space to be utilized however they want. Because like the little Muppet area kind of is like, it's just weird with like Star Tours. It's not ideal.
Now, can you possibly see that being a kind of like a Cars attraction? Because then you would have the Lightning McQueen Racing Academy right there with it. And the studios kind of already is infused with like Pixar IP. Plus, it would be a different kind of attraction than what DCA has with Radiator Springs Racers. Yeah. Actually, our good buddy of ours, Slimer, actually had that idea that it could be sort of like the Daytona 500, but it wouldn't be the Daytona 500. It would be whatever it's called in
Cars
in the Cars world. Yeah.
But yeah, Rock and Roller Coaster is going. I know that for a fact. So it's just a matter of when does that announcement come, but like that's been something that I thought was going to be announced, 2 years ago. And I feel like it's kind of turning into another Figment where everyone thinks it's going to be announced and it just doesn't happen. But Hollywood Studios, I really think that like long term it'd be fantastic if we get another land, some of the answers to like the spaces that just feel dead right now. That park has so many good attractions right now, and if they add just a few more, I think it could very quickly turn into one of the best theme parks in the world if they just kind of make it just that much better. Because it's good right now, but I feel like a lot of people don't love it. So a few more things over the next decade, some shows, some e-tickets, that'd be really good. Last park I haven't talked about is Epcot. I have absolutely no expectations for Epcot whatsoever. Yeah. I think you kind of touched on it earlier about how kind of Disney can get themselves in trouble. I vividly remember when Josh announced that the Figment meet and greet was coming back to Epcot, that they showed a picture of the Imagination Pavilion.
Yep.
And for like 1 minute, everyone thought that it's happening, and then he's like, "Oh, it's just a meet and greet." So it's all about how this stuff is presented and how it's done. I truly have absolutely no expectations for Epcot other than Test Track updates. Do I think that this version of Test Track is going to be the best version of Test Track yet? Absolutely. Am I excited to hear more about it? Absolutely. It's also, like we've been talking about, it's a 12,000 seat venue. So how long do you talk about things that have already been announced? Yes, I want them to be addressed and I want more details on them, but like those big announcements really need to have the time that's safe for them, Yeah. And that's kind of like thinking back to like 2015 and 2017 when we got Toy Story Land and Galaxy's Edge and the Epcot plans. Like that was the big stuff. And when they spent 30 minutes talking about Epcot, everyone was excited about it because the plans were so big at the time. Did the plans turn into lights that don't work in the middle of the World Celebration and a hallway? Yes. Do we talk about that? No, I don't like talking about that. But I think on the terms of Walt Disney World, I mean, I would love the new parade. I'd love, Big Thunder Mountain plans. The big things is what I'm really focused on because we've gotten Tiana's. I love Tiana's. Everyone knows that. Country Bear Musical Jamboree, saw it yesterday with Jack. I think it's a really fun show. So it's like we've gotten all the things that kind of like were announced for Walt Disney World. They're done now. So what's next? And I think that those announcements need to focus on the big things. Shifting over to Disneyland, though, once you guys start talking about that, there is one thing I want to touch on once we get there.
Okay. And then really quick, I'm just going to cosmic rewind back to what you were saying before. But I actually agree with you with the Tropical Americas. We already got that announcement. We already know where it's going to be placed. We already know what the IP is. It's going to be Encanto and Indiana Jones, and probably that little pavilion thing with Coco if they're still considering that. I think if they're going to have a conversation about that project, it is going to be the specifics.
Yeah, I would hope so.
What is it with Encanto? You mentioned it's Encanto, but what is it? Is it like a Mystic Manor kind of attraction?
That would be the no-brainer, like ride system for that. You make you build the Encanto house, the magical house, and you use the ride system for Mystic Manor. It's made for that, but we'll see what they do. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. With Indiana Jones, obviously they're going to keep the same ride system as what Dinosaur is, but it's going to be a completely different storyline than what Indiana Jones Adventure is out of Disneyland. As far as with Beyond Big Thunder, I hope we get the villains. And if we do get the villains, they need to give them a proper placement and not have it be kind of this, I say it all the time, this watered down, Candy Crush, sugar-coated kind of version of the villains. Like I want like nitty-gritty villains. Like I want people to walk into that land and walk out with shit in their pants because they're so freaking scared.
So you want basically like the Dark Universe sort of treatment.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. Kind of have like that. And it would kind of tie in because the placement of where the villains would be off of Haunted Mansion. So the Haunted Mansion already has like that gothic style of a manor. So, I mean, I think the placement would fit perfect. As far as
I think the last thing, not to cut you off, but I don't want to forget the thought. The last thing you mentioned, Animal Kingdom again. I'm glad you did because that Zootopia show. It's been another year, no details.
Thank God.
Don't get your hopes up too much because Shakira is coming back for that show, and I'm hoping that that's a little thing that they touch on.
I don't mind the show. My thing is it's putting it in the Tree of Life. That's what's completely throwing me off. Yeah, and it's just it's probably going to be a great show, and I'm saying this now, but yet am I going to be a person that's going to go and see it? Absolutely, like I'll be in there. But I don't know. I just feel like the placement of that show is just so wonky.
It feels like that was kind of like a Bruce Vaughn coming back in, and I feel like he's got the most level-headed takes on Imagineering, and I love that he's back. When I saw him at the Tiana Media event, I'm like, thank you for coming back. He's like, yeah, very, very serious. Those were his exact words, very serious. But I do hope that they touch on that show a little bit, confirm that Shakira is coming back, maybe say, like, confirm that the Benjamin Clawhauser animatronic, Officer Clawhauser, is going to be a part of that. Just touch on it a little bit and give us some details about when this stuff is closing. When are we It's like, am I okay with getting a Zootopia show? Yes, because I will be seeing that more than I see, It's Tough to Be a Bug. I never see It's Tough to Be a Bug. So, like, that will give me a reason to go in there and watch that. But, like, the fact that it's been a year for a show to get mentioned again, let alone the Avengers e-ticket. I know we're going to talk about Disneyland, but 2 years? Just get that thing confirmed? Like, come on, guys, let's go. Let's go.
And that was another PR blunder, I think. I don't know if you guys remember, but, like, they were teasing, they were showcasing the Shanghai Zootopia stuff in the lead up to the last expo, right?
They were.
Right, and they were like, "Look at what we're getting over here in Shanghai with Zootopia. This is an incredibly immersive land. I mean, one of the best things.
So good, yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. The kinetic energy is like everywhere. It's awesome. They led with that, and then like a couple days later, because everyone's thinking, "Oh man, they're like, what if we get Zootopia at Walt Disney World somewhere?" Right? That was kind of like the hype. So then. They get on the expo stage and it ends up being this Tree of Life thing, which might not be a terrible thing necessarily, but when you show us that, like, okay, Shanghai is getting this, and then they give us a 4D 3D show, it's like it's a letdown. And that wasn't necessarily like an indictment on the show itself, because I'm just like you guys are saying, it's probably gonna be really fun. It'd be a lot of fun. It's gonna be cute.
I know what you mean though. It's just it's you go from a massive land that's one of, like you said, the most kinetic energy. There's so many details in that land. And then it's like you go to a show. Like you said, is the show gonna be fine? Yes. Is this a diss on the project team at all working on that show? No, not at all. But it's just natural human instinct, I feel, to look at a beautiful land that's being built for the first time ever, and then going to a show in a theater that's existed for 25 plus years.
Yeah, exactly.
And then with Beyond Big Thunder, I think they're going to utilize Coco. I don't know why. I think that would be a nice transition going beyond the frontier land beyond Big Thunder. It would be a nice segue. And then it would also be a nice kinetic energy to go from Coco into the Villains Land, because the Villains Land then would have Fantasyland, and right below it would be where the Haunted Mansion is. So, and then we touched upon with Hollywood Studios. I agree with you that animation courtyard, I don't even know why it's even still called animation courtyard. It has no relevance of an animation courtyard. It has a Disney Junior show. They're going to have the updated Little Mermaid show, and then you have Star Wars Launch Bay. Like, there's no,
like a melting pot of randomness.
Yeah, right. I know.
Now with Epcot, the only thing that I would think that if they were to make any kind of major announcements is the possibility of a new country pavilion in World Showcase, because that was something that was never really touched upon with the Epcot overhaul, that it was just focused on Future World. Now we were supposed to get Cherry Tree Lane, Mary Poppins into the UK. Now, who knows? Maybe down the road they may take another shot at it again. It's possible, but it makes me wonder too, because they're also going to have D23 in Brazil.
Yes,
and I'm curious to know like what that's all about, because they're not just going to just pick some random place and say, yeah, we're going to throw D23 in there and see what is it with the Brazilian market. And they're also doing the Tropical Americas, which is heavily in South America. So something's going on between Disney and Brazil that I think is going to eventually come to a head either at their expo, or we may get a little taste of it at this expo.
Is that why we're seeing some weirdness over there in the Morocco pavilion? With like the tiles, they're kind of cheaping out on stuff because they kind of maybe know that pavilion's on borrowed time, and it maybe will become a Brazil pavilion or something else. Is that a possibility?
I don't think Morocco's going anywhere. But I think to add on to what you said, George, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I wanted to mention that we're getting another D23. But like that, the possibility of that also affecting our announcements, because they're going to have to announce things there. And like, is this the main D23 that the majority of the world is focused on? Absolutely. But the fact that they're going to the lengths to hold an entire event in a different country, there's going to be stuff that comes out of that. So like what is announced here, what is announced there, what's announced, just in between that we get, on Disney Parks blog. How is there a balance of that to where you do stuff to where the fans are happy, but also not too much or not too little? And that's what I'm very curious about, kind of tied in with all this. But I think that just about covers it for WW. Like all the.
And then before we move over, OG, did you have any things to add on?
No, I think you guys pretty much covered everything. I think the Tropical Americas, we'll probably get more information on that. That's confirmed, at this point. Beyond Big Thunder, we have to get some concrete stuff. I mean, if he gets up there again with like, we're thinking about this, oh my gosh, Josh, that would be a disaster. I mean, we need some concrete stuff with that. And I think we'll get it. To be fair, I think we will.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So those are the biggies, I think,
I'm sorry. One more thing I actually completely forgot about. I'm going to put some chips down that a Moana attraction coming to Adventureland.
Yes. Okay. That's high on the list because Moana is like the queen of Disney Plus. Like she crushes. Those numbers are insane. They're doing a sequel for her, which I think is going to be another $1 billion movie, almost certainly.
Easily. Yeah. We have Inside Out at like 1.25. We're going to have Deadpool and Wolverine hit $1 billion and then Moana hit $1 billion. We're finally seeing some money being made, which is nice. Exactly.
So Moana's, they're going to put her somewhere over there and probably Adventureland. And that's where she should be. I think that's perfect.
Yeah. And then like the little Pirates bar they got announced too. I'm now remembering things that have been announced, but because it's been a year, I forgot about. But yeah, the Pirates bar, like, come on.
And I'm sorry, to your point, Drew, with the Pirates bar, with the Zootopia show, I'm sorry, they should have already been in there.
Yeah, like there should be work on them. Like that's why like the Country Bear Musical Jamboree. I think a big part of why I like that show is because it was so far into development when Chris Beatty announced it last year that it's already opening in a week. Like, whenever Chris Beatty announced like Country Bear Musical Jamboree was happening, he's like, oh yeah, we've already got recording sessions done. You guys want to see that? And they showed us that. Like, there was actual work happening on it. Wow. And I met one of the Imagineers yesterday, Jake. I'm like, yeah, it's nice to see this like actually being in development when it was announced. He's like, yeah, we did this pretty quickly and it turned out beautifully. So it's like, that's what Disney was known for. And then once the pandemic hit, it didn't happen anymore. And I think kind of like to wrap up like what we've been talking about, I don't love that we're going a year between announcement to construction. Something shouldn't be announced if it's going to take a year to start, even if it's something as little as, a Tree of Life show or a Pirates bar. Like that should be happening 3 to 6 months after it's announced, because why are you announcing it at that point? Like,
oh yeah. And then you break the trust with fans because you announce something and then it's like, well, where is it? And the announcements lose, like you start to, it's almost
they
like
lose that specialness. They're no longer special. And like, I know I keep talking about 2015 and 2017, but that's something that I know a lot of people like hate Bob Chapek, but like, that's something I will give to him is his presentations. Like when I look back at them, I'm like, I loved those presentations. And like, I know that these things didn't happen with Epcot. Like I know we never got the festival center. I'm well aware of what's going on in the company, and not necessarily what's going on with the company, but like how we haven't been getting these things. But like we also have to remember the Walt Disney World was closed for 4 months. Disneyland was closed for 14 months. So at the time, those things announced in 2019 were much more relevant to, COVID hitting in 2020. But now there's no more excuse for that anymore. Like we need Josh to build his legacy. We need him to start doing these major things. And like, even if you look at Tiana's Bayou Adventure, it was announced in June of 2020 and Splash didn't close till January of 2023 out here in May of 2023 at Disneyland. So like the announcement for that was even massive. And I know that was tied into COVID, because like things were just starting to pick back up again. But like, that's why, like I said, Country Bear Musical Jamboree was such a breath of fresh air, because that's what we've been known to love for Imagineering. When these announcements are made that they were already doing those recording sessions for months at that point, to Country Bear's closing in January and it's already done 6 months later. Like that's what this should be. So we need to start seeing that happen again. And I think that's where we'll start to see the tide shift with the fans starting to become more positive overall again.
Exactly. They gotta give us big announcements, and they gotta give us some reassurances that these things are actually going to happen, because they don't want to get into a place where like with Lucasfilm is in a bad place right now, where it's like they'll announce a movie And then fans are like, yeah, we'll believe it when we see it, basically, right? Because it's like there's so many canceled projects and stuff that they broke that trust with the fans. So even when they announce anything now, no one believes it. You know what I'm saying? And the parks division and Josh, they don't want to get into that rut. They don't want to get into a place where no matter what they do, no matter what they announce, fans are really skeptical. Is this really going to happen? And like you, Drew, I actually give them a little bit of a pass because the 2019 Expo happened like just literally months before the like the pandemic, you know?
Yeah.
So I understand that, you know, like even with like, we'll talk about it, but like the Avengers e-ticket, that kind of fell in the 2019 announcement too. And then we had like, you know, the pandemic and a CEO change and the MCU to underperform a little bit.
And
so
Bruce Wan coming back and all this stuff. But no one talks about that though. Yeah.
No one talks about that. So there is some nuance to this stuff. So completely understand that, you know.
Okay, literally the last thing I'm going to talk about for Walt Disney World, then we're going on to Disneyland.
Sure.
But I thought of it when I mentioned Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 making $1.25 billion at the box office. It's like, this isn't my idea again by any means, but I want to mention it because it's so perfect that it's like, if it doesn't happen, why? We had, you know, Wonders of Life, you know, with Cranium Command. Do Cranium Command at 2.0 with A1000 animatronics of Inside Out. Like it's so easy. Just do it, please.
Yes, exactly. Inside Out is a perfect. I know fans get upset with IP and all that, but Inside Out's the perfect compromise. Okay, so you have the $1 billion franchise for Burbank, you know, for the money people, right? Oh, cool. You know, we'll put the franchise in Epcot.
In both movies, they're good though. Like they deserve the money that they've made, and people are reacting to these new characters. So it's like, why wouldn't you utilize that brand new technology with these animatronics?
Exactly.
In a space that has nothing right now.
I was just going to say, the Wonders of Life Pavilion has been empty for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And then they were going to put the Play Pavilion in there, which is like,
I will say, I'm actually very glad. The Play Pavilion is the one thing that I'm so glad that it got canceled because like that emoji stuff already would have been outdated now in 2024. So that might be like a blessing in disguise to still have that space available. Then Inside Out 2 comes out, it makes all this money, and then bam, you have your.
I agree with you. I was not a fan of it, honestly. It gave me like that.
Like
Ralph breaks Ralph breaks the internet vibes, which the movie was okay.
That lines up though with when it was announced. Ralph came out end of 2018. That was announced in summer of 2019. Right. So it just goes to show right now we're having Inside Out make this money, and we've got this in a month. Are they going to fast track a green light project? You know, throw it out there and get that reaction. Hopefully.
Yeah, I do. I agree.
Yeah, we'll see.
Right, now we going to Disneyland now?
We're going to Anaheim.
Let's do it. Let's go
to Disneyland. So, Drew, what's your predictions for Disneyland Resort? What are we getting?
All right. So, I mean, we've got the 70th anniversary of Disneyland coming up, and this is like the perfect time to start talking about the 70th. I mean, I think back to how good the Diamond celebration was for the 60th. It was so, like, some of my favorite core memories from Disneyland were the Diamond celebration, just because of how gorgeous it was, and it was so classy. It felt like it was honoring Walt and the diamonds. That was Disneyland. It was so good. And now that we have the 70th coming up, there's been a rumor that's floating around that whenever, like, I know I've mentioned it a few times, if I talk about something, I want to make it clear if it's my information, which I have started to get recently, or if it's just something that's floating around. This one has been floating around, but I do believe personally that it is happening based off what I've been told, and that is the Walt Disney animatronic. I think that that's going to be one of these big wow moments at this presentation, where we're going to get that first teaser of this A1000 Walt figure being added to Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. And I think that that's happening. That's like the one big surprise that, you know, hasn't been talked about officially anywhere. And they're like, oh yeah, we've got an A1000 Walt Disney animatronic coming. He's going to introduce the show. That's going to add this longevity in life to a classic attraction that Walt loved, you know, with this Abe Lincoln animatronic. I think that that's such a perfect win, and I really hope that happens. But now we get to the Avengers e-ticket. This is where I think that this project,
the what?
The Avengers
e-ticket.
Sorry, I thought you were mentioning something that was relevant.
Hopefully it's relevant in a month after the time of this recording. But I think that this ride is going to be a blast, quite literally going to be a blast. This is like the thing that I'm kind of okay with them taking a long time on it, because like there was that shift in like the original idea to like this King Thanos like ride system with like with the digital media and these practical sets. I do hope that they actually spend some time on this one, because it has so much potential. I mean, I know that
Spend some time. In order for me to ride this thing, I'm going to have to buy a ticket using my social security check by the time that they're done.
like, man, they've I mean, it's not acceptable that it's been 2 years since it was first announced, but like, I kind of think about it being like a year since it was, like a year and a half since it was announced. I don't know, because like at Destination D23 last September is when we really got those concrete details with it, where like the executive creative director of the project came on and he's like, yeah, here's the concept art of the ride vehicle, and then like the day after, Walt Disney Imagineering posted on Instagram that there's going to be massive physical sets mixed with that digital media. So it's kind of giving me like a modern Spider-Man vibe from Universal Orlando out here. But I like that they're doing that because it allows. I always think like with screens, is it being done the right way? But like with that first piece of concept art we got, I think that they really want to incorporate a ton of characters here. And the only way to really incorporate a ton of Marvel characters is through digital media, because that allows you to animate them and really bring them into the ride, you know, mix them with like the main characters in audio animatronic form with a fun ride system. I really think that Avengers Campus quite literally needs this attraction because it's just not, you know, the best thing they've ever done. And I haven't been to Avengers Campus, so I can't form a full opinion on it, but everyone I talk to, it seems like there's a general consensus of they wanted to do something Avengers and it just was put in the wrong spot. And it kind of kills me seeing it put into, not that Bugs Land was great by any means. I have no attachment to Bugs Land, going away. But it kind of kills me that like Disneyland Forward got approved now and they could have used some of that space for an event, bigger Avengers thing. But I'm hoping that this e-ticket kind of really balances out Avengers Campus and it's that big wow thing.
Or as our friend Bricky calls it, Avengers Hallway.
Avengers Hallway.
That land just seems like colorless to me from what I've seen, just like too modern. But
Very
like I
much.
said, I'm a big believer on not shaming people for their experiences and also seeing something with my own eyes. I haven't seen it with my own eyes. I haven't even watched a POV of Web Slingers to this day, so I will not judge it. But then that kind of leans into Disneyland Forward. Like they have the approval for it now, and they've been talking about like how exciting it is to get to work with like Anaheim. I think that this is going to be like the big thing for Disneyland, you know, unless we get like that surprise Tomorrowland transformation announcement, which I think we're all praying for. But like actually getting some concrete details of Disneyland Forward, and like they've talked about the Avatar experience, and like we've got that early piece of Blue Sky concept art with like the boat ride from, you know, the Way of Water. And I think if they really lean into Disneyland Forward, because this is going to be a decade-long thing, kind of give some of those concrete plans for this next decade, set up the first, you know, 3 to 5 years of that decade. And then as we go into these, you know, future expos, do more of that. I think that that's where the Blue Sky thing could actually come in handy here. You drop the concrete details for the Avatar land coming to, you know, Disneyland Forward. And then, you know, they say, hey, this is going to be a decade-long thing because it's going to be such a long, you know, development. We want to give you guys some of our ideas because this is going to take some time. That's where you use Blue Sky. That's where it works, in my opinion. I think that, you know, as a part of that, there's always that big, you know, announcement. Like they've been teasing for years, you know, like Frozen and like these big lands. Like, are they going to clone one of those lands that's been successful? Personally, I hope that they don't clone any of those lands and that Disneyland Forward gets some original stuff. Not, you know, like original, like Big Thunder Mountain original, but original lands, kind of like Zootopia at Shanghai, where it's like a first of its kind.
If you were to pick, what would you choose as an original?
Like if I had to choose a land going into Disneyland Forward, oh man, that's a really good question. I mean, I know that we already have like Toy Story lands, but something that I've always wanted is like a
OG's favorite land.
Yeah, so like Toy Story Land, I like Toy Story Land, and the execution is okay, and I know that there were cuts to it, but like I've always wanted a Toy Story Land with a full-on Woody's Roundup dark ride.
Where that's cool. I like that.
Because like it's taking inspiration from Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, where you're walking into the cartoon. But like, why not create a brand new episode of Woody's Roundup? But we are a part of that. You know, it's Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, but instead of screens, it's full on physical sets with these A1000 animatronics. So it's like I don't know if that's like a land by any means. But I guess
I like that idea. I like that idea, Drew. Where take a different angle on the Toy Story thing, because usually it's like, you know, Andy's room or his backyard.
It's been like cookie cutter so far. It's been very typical. But I feel like they've also been. I love the Walt Disney Imagineering when they lean into like the authentic story, because like Tiana's Bayou Adventure, it has so much story that I've been obsessing on. And even yesterday in the queue line, I saw new little things. I'm like, oh, that explains that. But like, I feel like even something like if you had like a world-class e-ticket Woody's Roundup Dark Ride with, like, just think about how cool a Bullseye and Woody audio animatronic would be, or like Woody's with his lasso. Like that'd be one of the coolest things that Disney has ever done.
Thank you.
But also the fact that we've never gotten like a full-on Pizza Planet, like with an actual arcade, and like you can mix these things up. I feel like it doesn't necessarily have to be like this cohesive Annie's Backyard thing. Like just throw in what people want. Personally, that's something that I would love. It doesn't really answer your question because I don't know what I would put in for a land there. But I definitely wouldn't want Frozen. I mean, Zootopia could work because it's all the way over in Shanghai. I just hope that it's done right. And I know that I kind of hinted on it being like a decade-long thing, but like I'm okay with that because I want these things to be done right. And when you look at someone like Bruce Vaughan, Bruce Vaughan was the lead dude on, Pandora, the World of Avatar with James Cameron and John Landau. And it's really sad that John Landau just passed because he was such a talent. It's been bumming me out a lot that he passed away because Bruce Vaughan literally just posted earlier on LinkedIn that he was one of the driving forces between getting Avatar to California.
Oh wow!
Do you think that because we have seen like clips of John Landau actually in Imagineering when he did his little video snippet of, do you think that there was enough that was done on the project prior to his passing that they have enough to
I think that because kind of like what I just said with Bruce posting about him being a driving force, I think that he kind of has his skin in the game forever with Avatar at the Disney parks. And I think that they're getting to that point where they can kind of honor his legacy with this now. And I hope that that's the classy angle that they take with this presentation and say in honor of John Landau, and we want to, talk about this and kind of I was kind of shocked that like we never got a statement from Disney on his passing because I feel like he's just such a great talent. And if they acknowledge it at this presentation, then kind of go into the Disneyland Forward News with this and kind of getting those concrete details, I think that'd be a really classy way to honor him as a person and just, what he's done for the company. But kind of to wrap up my thoughts on Disneyland, I think that that's about it. I mean, that Walt Disney Animatronic would be so good. Those 70th anniversary plans, we really don't know anything about the 70th anniversary, so that would be one of those major things that I've been talking about, where spend a lot of time on that, go into the 70th anniversary. A Tomorrowland overhaul would be the perfect thing as a part of that 70th anniversary. Yeah. Give us all these concrete details on the e-ticket, and hopefully some fun other surprises with Disneyland Forward. That's
it's interesting because I think you hit the nail on the head. The 70th, I think the Walt animatronic is I think pretty close to. I mean, I would bet money on that. Will be a big thing at the expo.
It's just such an easy win, and I think that something that why I like Country Bear Musical Jamboree, not that they're A1000s, but you actually can appreciate these animatronics for 11 minutes. Right. Whereas like on Tiana's Bayou Adventure, when you're passing Lewis and Tiana, they're so good, but you pass by them, you're just floating by them. Whereas if they put the time and money into a Walt animatronic, you're going to get to actually watch the show, appreciate him for a few minutes. And it's also just a way to honor the company as a whole, right? And Walt was, what I love about Walt is he was so big on the animatronics. Like that was under Walt when he was alive. So what better way to honor Walt Disney with the current technology of audio animatronics?
And it's just funny that you say that because I actually said the same exact thing to an Imagineer, and I believe it was I think it was Gary Landrum. This was back in 2011 when I did the dining with an Imagineer at the Hollywood Brown Derby.
I love that.
And I had mentioned that, and I said, have you guys ever considered, being that Walt was an innovator and an optimistic person that I believe it was Marty Sklar that said, Walt had one foot in the past and one foot in the future. And it's like, what a way to honor his legacy than to take something that he was passionate about and showcase that. And I remember Gary had mentioned, and he said, well, and this was at that moment, he said, that's actually very interesting of how you say that. And he said, it has been tossed around about doing something like that, but he said it would have to be at a time where we know that we would be ready for it. And also because we want to honor Walt. We don't want to insult him in a sense where it can't just be like a shot in the dark sort of thing. And we just do something. And this was your concern, OG. If you're going to do an audio animatronic of Walt, it has to be spot on.
Absolutely. Yeah, it has to be perfect. So I think that's a given at this expo. I think that Pandora will get more information on that, maybe more concept art. They have to tell us where it's going.
Yep.
Like, and it likely will be DCA. I think that's kind of what the leading rumor is. DCA.
It's funny because Disney denied that this happened, but at IAPA, one of those lunch and learns, I think it was 2022. Yeah, it was at IAPA in 2022. They said it was going to California Adventure, and I posted about it on Twitter at the time because I had two people that were there, and they just said it's going to California Adventure. Post this, so I posted it and ran with it. And then 30 minutes later, I get messages from people saying Disney is denying this. I'm like, well, they said it, so I never took it down. I mean, like at that point, I respect like things being said at a certain time, but if you're saying it, then it's free game in my opinion at that point. If it's public information, if I'm going behind their back and leaking something, I understand that's something I'll ever do. But in regards to this, they definitely said it was coming to California Adventure. So we'll see.
Yeah. I remember that. I think it was Chris Beatty who said it or something, right? Yeah.
I just met Chris, and he's a good dude. So he definitely slipped up there, though.
Yeah, I actually met him. He is really nice. I met him
really cool.
Back at Destination D, Walt Disney World 40th, when they made the announcement that the original Tiki Room was coming back.
Oh wow.
That's when I met him. But I wanted to go back to the Avengers e-ticket really quick, and I wanted to ask you guys something of wondering like if Imagineering would kind of utilize the technology, because AI is kind of like an iffy thing right now, because you would have to get like permission from the actors and what have you and everything. But do you think if they did get permission from the actors portraying the Marvel characters and what have you, do you think that they would utilize like AI facial recognition maybe on certain characters that they would utilize in the attraction? Or do you think that they would actually get the actors themselves to reprise their roles in the attraction?
I think they'd get the actors. I mean, for Avengers, it's not like these guys are like, I would understand if this was like, like for example, like Princess Leia or something. Like she's unfortunately she's no longer with us, Carrie Fisher. So you have to kind of make do. You know what I'm saying? In a situation like that, but like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans are all here,
right? But do you think that could possibly be a delay because of like contract wise of like how much that they would
ask for?
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting thing. That might even be part of why it's maybe taking so long for the attraction, right? Because you have all these.
I was going to say, I think that comes back to more of the development side of things, and if those issues come up, then that's what adjusts the story. I would assume that happens behind the scenes. Like those aren't things that we're ever going to know about. But I think like a perfect example is like Bradley Cooper not doing Rocket's voice on Cosmic Rewind. Like what happened there? So when you're taking an e-ticket with so many characters, like I talked about earlier. How do you do that right, and how do you do that in a way that you can actually have those performances?
And that's why I brought it up, because that's a perfect example. Bradley Cooper, all he would have to do is go into a recording studio,
he could do it
read
at
the
his
lines.
house.
He could literally phone it in. So like what was the situation that they had to get another actor? Is it something that has to do with, again, like breach of contract of like how much that they're asking for of that? Like I wonder, like just like all the yellow and red tape
because Indiana Jones Adventure, the Indiana Jones voice is not Harrison Ford.
Yeah.
So they didn't even use his voice. I mean,
this is like, not to go off topic here, but this is a pet peeve of mine, because like these attractions are experienced by millions of people for 20 to 30 years, if not longer.
Oh yeah.
So I feel like with these attractions, it's more important than ever to get the actual people to come back, because their voices and performances live on in such a different and unique way. Like every time I go on Tiana's Bayou Adventure and I hear Anika and Michael Leon Woolley, as Tiana and Lewis, I'm like, this is going to live on for 20 years, and millions of people are going to see this. And whenever they say, oh yeah, like that take is good, or that performance is good, like that's what lives on. So it's like, that's a very, very detailed and deep way to look at it. But like when she was singing Special Spice in the recording studio and they're like, yep, that's good. Like that's what we hear now for 20 years. And is it being done to its absolute best? I mean, I know these things are. But in regards to the AI, I can't see them ever doing that, because if you look at what we've been known to love for Walt Disney Imagineering for these last 70 years now, it's been, that standard of doing things at the, the Disney difference that has been talked about. So I hope that they go to the lengths to do this right. And especially because it's Avengers and Marvel is popular, it's so popular and going to become more popular, with the next phases. I hope that, if that's part of these delays or whatever is happening behind the scenes, I hope it's because it's being done right.
Yeah, no, well said. And I think maybe okay, so Pandora will definitely get more info on that. I think Avengers e-ticket, there's a solid chance we get more info on that.
I do believe that that's coming in. The project has it's already well underway. So
okay, the Avengers, the
yeah,
e-ticket.
the e-ticket, yes.
Okay, so
What I was saying earlier with it being a blast is my little hint with that.
Oh,
I'm not gonna. I can't say these things, quite literally, because I say that I won't. But it's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be a blast.
It's gonna be a blast. Oh, yeah. Okay. So Avengers e-ticket and then Pandora, right? So that's pretty good for DCA. Let's just assume that those things, we get a big e-ticket for Pandora, we get the Avengers e-ticket. That's solid. That's what this park really needs. They've kind of dropped the ball on DCA since they reimagined it in 2012. They haven't really given it a huge investment. And it's falling behind. Disneyland is like, Disneyland has like 57 e-tickets,
It's crazy.
It's nuts,
If you really look at Disneyland's lineup and like how Runaway Railway was an addition to Disneyland, it's like, what? Like, it's crazy. It's so good.
And I was saying in the lead up to that whole thing, like years ago, how that would have been perfect for like DCA, because DCA needs more family friendly stuff. You could have put that in Hollywood Land. It would have been perfect,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Hollywood Land, because I'm wondering if that space could eventually be used for that Avengers expansion as part of something with the e-ticket. Who knows?
That would be interesting. Go ahead, George.
No, really quick. I was just going to say, because I had mentioned this before, DCA reminds me of that middle child for which Disneyland doesn't even have a third gate yet, which they will eventually.
Yeah.
So they don't have the baby, but they have the first child, which is Disneyland, and then there's the middle child, DCA, that just gets the hand-me-downs and like doesn't get all the attention.
And that's what frustrates me. And I see the fandom kind of fall into this a little bit too, where it's like they don't really care about DCA too much because it's not Disneyland. But my thing is like, if it has Walt Disney's name on the sign, Disney, then you should treat it the same as you do Disneyland. And not only that, but it's only feet away from Walt's original park. Like, you want it to be the best it could be. Like, I want DCA to be incredible. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just in the shadow of Walt's park. So yeah, I mean, hopefully Pandora changes the whole perception of DCA. We'll see. I think it'll probably go in that Simba lot, is more than likely. Hollywood Land, we'll see. That's another thing. I mean, maybe it'll be Avengers expansion, like Drew was saying, or maybe they get rid of it and it becomes like Zootopia. It's already an urban setting right now with Hollywood Land. You can keep the trolley even if you turn it into Zootopia. That's a possibility. We talked about that with Bricky in our recent video, George, right? Mm-hmm. That would be an interesting choice. And Zootopia sort of feels like DCA. It's a very kind of modern kind of DCA vibe. You know what I'm saying? So I can see that. And that's, in terms of announcements, I think that's more long shot, but it's a possibility, I guess, Yeah,
because I mean, there's always those things that come out of left field, like the San Francisco announcement. Like it was nothing major, but like no one knew that was coming, and that's one of those. I love when things don't leak, because it just makes it so much more fun for us, because that's the entire point of what these presentations should be, is that they're announcements, and that's why, like, when I come back to like the things that we already know, is like, were those announcements at some point? Yes, but I also feel like when you have a 12,000 seat venue, I keep saying that, but you need those surprises, because that's what's going to get people to be like, oh, this was so much fun, and this was worth spending, all this money and time to be here. And even everyone watching at home, like us, that we're going to have those reactions, sitting on the couch being like, what? And then going on the Disney Parks blog and looking at the concept art and looking at all the little details on how they're describing it. And those are the things that we live for as Disney fans. So that's what I want from this.
Yeah. And Disney knew how to do these. Like, you were right. The 2015, when Bob Iger came on there and said, we're not building one, we're building two.
Like, those are those iconic moments. Yeah.
Yes. It was like the energy was like, yeah. And then even like with Star Wars Celebration, the same year, I think it was 2015, that was when they premiered the Chewie We're Home trailer, and the crowd went nuts, right?
Yeah.
So Disney, like back then, they knew what they had to do, and they delivered it. Just get back to that,
I think it's very funny you guys mentioning like the Bob Iger like mentioning Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
Because at that time, Chapek was chairman of Parks, and Iger then was still like, "Oh no, this is a big enough announcement. You're not gonna announce this. I'm gonna announce this first."
Yeah, because he announced that the day before the Parks presentation.
Yeah,
and they had so much to talk about that they could actually talk about a Parks announcement a day before the Parks presentation, because they had Toy Story Land the next day, and like, that's what we need again. So I hope.
Yes. Yes, please. I mean, yeah, if they can deliver that energy and that significant of announcements and everything at this expo, I think it'll be a massive hit. You know, and then we won't care so much if we get a few musical numbers in between. It's all good then.
Because like people will actually, because like I know I've talked about it earlier, but like I remember when I was with Zach last year, like you can't enjoy those musical numbers when you're still thinking in the back of your mind, where's the announcement that I want to happen? If you get the announcement that you want to happen and then it's followed by music, then you're like, heck yeah, let's go. You're high-fiving everyone around you. And you actually get to enjoy the musical number rather than staring at these people performing like...
Oh, I'm telling you right now, because no one's ever experienced an expo with me before, like at the parks panel. And it's been a while since they've actually announced something significant. When they do that and I'm physically there, you would think that we're actually at the Super Bowl.
This is our Super Bowl.
I literally, like, I go nuts. Like, I'm going to feel bad for the person that's sitting in front of us because they're probably going to be tone deaf by the time we're out of the arena.
And Drew, you're absolutely right. Like, this stuff is our Super Bowl. Like, I'm not a big sports person at all. And, like, I remember back in the day, like Disney would like they would put like the Star Wars trailers during Monday Night Football, right? And they wouldn't tell you what time. It was just during the game.
Yeah, like the last 5 minutes, so you have to watch the entire thing.
The whole thing, and I'm sitting there like I'm like so bored out of my mind. It's like having to chew through the pizza box to get to the pizza, right? And it's like, oh my god, you know. But this stuff is our Super Bowl. I mean, it's exciting, man.
That's what's funny to me is like whenever people talk about like Disney adults, like I know that there's always like the people who are like way too over the top with things, you know, whether that's sports or concerts or Disney, but like. Whenever you look at like the lengths that people go to cheer on their teams, and even like with Taylor Swift, like no one complains about that. But whenever it's Disney, then you're suddenly the problem. You know, if someone wants to drop $400 to go to D23, you're a crazy Disney adult. But if you spend $1,000 on a Taylor Swift ticket, that's perfectly acceptable. Or if you spend $2,000 to go to the Super Bowl, that's perfectly acceptable. It drives me crazy, like the double standard.
The double standard is unreal, and it's like it bothers me when it's like painted as like this is kid stuff, right? Oh, you wear mouse ears. It's like, okay, well, what about the sports fans who like take their shirt off and have like body
exactly, yeah. Or like the ones who will like go to it. Like I have nothing against these people. Like I listen to some of Taylor's songs, and I'm a huge Dodger fan. I love the Dodgers. I was born like right around Disneyland. That's where my love for Disneyland began. And my dad was a Dodger fan, so I love the Dodgers. But like, I understand that everyone's gonna have what they enjoy. So like, why do I care about what these people are enjoying if it doesn't affect my life? You know,
right?
Just let people be happy.
And
right, exactly.
Me and OG have a mutual friend, Mindy, and she asked me. She says, just out of curiosity, what's your take on when someone calls you a Disney adult? You know, where
I am.
Do you take it as an insult? Do you take it as and this is what I told her. I said, they say it as a slander negative term. Mm-hmm. But how I take it, I turn around and I say, you're damn right. Proud of it.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry that I find happiness in life. My apologies, guys. Yeah. But yeah, I think that covers just about like everything for Disneyland and Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
Are we going into international territory, or are we going to talk about some of these booths on the show floor?
Let's talk about some of these booths. Let's get into this.
I have it pulled up on my phone too. All right, you're one step ahead of me, my friend.
There we go. All right, let's dive into some.
Or if they do a musical number, if from Aladdin, it would be one jump ahead.
There you go. Exactly. All right, so we got Lightstorm. The Avatar Pavilion will be an immersive exhibit and walkthrough experience inspired by the alien beauty and unique storytelling of Avatar. Guests will discover the captivating culture of the Na'vi, exploring the bioluminescent forest, and soar through the mountains like a banshee. Now, this is I'm taking is going to be an overall kind of Avatar thing. I'm sure it'll be connected to the movies as well. Mm-hmm. Any chance, Drew, that you think we'll see some of the park stuff in this one?
Yeah, I mean, there's a golden opportunity. I mean, we'll talk about the parks, booth in a second. But like, anytime you're talking about Avatar, I mean, Pandora, the world of Avatar, Disney's Animal Kingdom, it's such a big part of Avatar. It was built because of these films, and once the connection to Disney parks starts to happen, I do think that you could easily, tie in something there to, the Avatar experience coming to Disneyland. But whenever it says the words immersive exhibit and walkthrough experience, I think it's definitely going to be leaning more into kind of bringing the films off screen and maybe having some props that you wouldn't see anywhere else. Kind of like a a one-of-a-kind few-day thing where they kind of allow you to walk into Pandora, so to say.
Interesting. What do you think, George? Any chance? Any park stuff at this Navi walkthrough?
I think they may have some stuff, but I don't know if it's going to be a lot of like newer stuff because oh yeah, I saw that too.
Oh yeah, get ready.
That because I've been to one of the expos where they did showcase a lot of like the Lightstorm and Avatar stuff, where it was a lot of like models of like the like not the prosthetics, but it shows like all the intertwinings of like how it takes like digitally to make the actors look like the Na'vi and what have you. But there is a possibility they may showcase that. I think that though, if they do something, which I'm for sure will tackle upon it once we get into the parks thing, but I think that they'll have something bigger entailed with Avatar, not really at the Lightstorm, but actually at the parks section.
Interesting. Okay, now we're going to dive into the parks panels in just a second, but I do want to touch upon this because this actually might... Bluey! Yeah. He is Bluey is like not even a franchise at this point. It's like a movement, you know?
I got a text earlier from our mutual friend Rudio. He said, "Oh, I'm so doing this."
Oh yeah, bro. This is crazy. So meet Bluey and Bingo at the Disney Plus Pavilion. Now this is interesting. So they're gonna be walking around characters. Is there any chance, Drew, that we see Bluey at the parks one day?
I hope so. I've watched barely any Bluey, but like I try to think like if I was a kid, would I be watching Bluey? Absolutely, because like I loved like Roly Poly Oly as a kid and like some of those more classic shows. My parents have so many stories of like when I had ear infections and they were up overnight with me watching Roly Poly Oly, so I'll always have like a connection to that show. Oh. But like Bluey and Bingo, I mean these costumes have been around for a while now, but to kind of turn it into a big thing at Disney Plus. It's like, why wouldn't you bring it to the parks? Unless there's some contractual issues that is happening behind the scenes. It's like, that would be like the perfect thing to bring into Hollywood Studios at Animation Courtyard. Because like they have those little meet and greet spaces outside of the show. It seems like such an easy win. And that's something that can appeal to people traveling and locals on both coasts. So why not?
And I love how Disney is anticipating on how popular this meet and greet is going to be.
It's like an entire list.
It's a whole list of times.
I'm telling you, man.
6, 7 times.
The hype is real for Bluey. The hype is absolutely real. Now, I wanted to bring those two up because I thought that was kind of interesting. But let's get to the parks panels now. Yeah. Now, this is fascinating. This is from the GOAT, Mr. Scott Gooston. We love Scott. We absolutely love Scott. Panels, pavilions, and more. So the first one is Imagineering Behind the Dreams, right? So Imagineering Behind the Dreams is a one-of-a-kind pavilion that gives our biggest fans unprecedented access to Imagineering's passionate and talented team of artists, engineers, and craftspeople. These design models, interactive demos, live prototypes, and exclusive presentations. You'll get a firsthand view of the innovative and immersive storytelling that will fuel the growth of Disney's parks, resorts, cruise ships, and other experiences for decades to come. What do you think about this one, Drew? Interesting, or?
Yeah, I think that in recent years, I've almost loved the booths and like the pavilions more than the presentations, because whenever they dedicate having a pavilion to something like Walt Disney Imagineering, this is where like you just read, they have the models, the demos, the Imagineers themselves, the prototypes, it's like they take a piece of what we've seen in the We Call It Imagineering episodes on YouTube and plop it right into the middle of this giant convention center. And there's no limit to how long you spend here. You can look at every little detail, and like in a presentation, they'll talk about it and they'll have the special guests, but then like it's over. They're just presenting it. Whereas here, you kind of actually get to like soak it all in and appreciate all the little things that they have. And I love that they actually have Imagineers working on the projects with their projects at the booths, because you can actually get to talk about these projects with them. What they're pouring their heart and soul into for so many years, and actually get to appreciate these things. So I think that I really hope that this is the biggest booth they've done. I feel like my favorite Imagineering booth in like recent memory was 2019 when Epcot was front and center and they had all the Epcot posters that they revealed. That one just seemed really good. I think the one in 2022 was decent, but like it wasn't anything crazy. Like they had the model of Te Fiti for Journey of Water and the Tiana model for Disneyland, but it was okay, but it wasn't anything groundbreaking because like we already knew that those projects were happening at that point. But like if they have like, you know, we haven't seen like the plans for Tropical Americas yet. So if they have like a Tropical Americas model and they drop these concrete planes and then you can walk up to the model, I think that'd be really neat. But like I said, I love the pavilions because it actually allows you to kind of take a step into Walt Disney Imagineering on the show floor. And I think that's super cool. And I love when they do these things.
Well said. Well said. What do you think, Italiano? What do you think? Does this one interest you or?
Yeah, definitely. I think this year now more than ever, I think a lot of people are going to be focused on anything that has like the parks or Imagineering tied to it because they want to see if they can get any kind of extra little detailed snippets of what could be coming to the parks, along with the musical presentations of the announcements. But but I think I agree with Drew. I think that they may have like a full scale model of like the Tropical Americas. I think that they'll be kind of already along the road of where they showed, as he had mentioned, off of we call it Imagineering because they kind of showed like a rough kind of model of what it's going to look like. I think we'll have a full-fledged model by the time the expo comes. I don't know if they'll be, I don't think that they're this far along with Avatar, but I mean, if they are, I would like to maybe see some more concept art of what they have in mind, because if they already know what they wanted to do, and I know president of Disneyland Ken Potrock mentioned at the Anaheim City Council that they know what they want to do with Avatar. They know where they want to put it. They know the ambitions behind it, but they have to have the city's approval for Disneyland Forward for them to be able to do what they want with it. So hopefully they kind of already have that kind of set in place, you know, kind of ready for when the Anaheim City Council agreed upon it, that they can now showcase those plans.
Yeah, hopefully. And hopefully we get that. Like when they show us stuff for Avatar, I really hope they show us where it's going. Because like that's like an OCD thing of mine. Like I need to know. You know, I really want to know where is it going, like how are they going to integrate that into the park, you know?
I have a feeling, and I could be wrong, I feel like we may not know what the actual e-ticket attraction is at this expo. I think we might get that at the next maybe Destination D23, or maybe the D23. I'm just still going to call it the expo or the fan event 2026. I think when they mentioned Avatar now, we're going to get a full-fledged like scope of what the land is going to look like, right, and the placement of where it's going.
Okay, I'd be fine with that. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Now the next pavilion is bringing the worlds of Disney animation to life in Disney parks. Team members from Imagineering and Walt Disney Animation Studios discuss bringing the worlds of Disney animation to life in the Disney parks around the world, including such projects as the World of Frozen, Fantasy Springs, and a little something called Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which Drew, you might know a little something about. What say you, Drew? Does this kind of interest you?
Quite honestly, this is the one. This is a presentation. It seems like, right? Because it doesn't say pavilion.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
This is quite honestly the only presentation that I'm sad I'm missing, even over the parks one. Because no one ever talks about how Walt Disney Animation Studios actually works alongside Imagineering like so closely. Like Roger Gould, he's like the main guy at Animation Studios who works alongside Imagineering to make sure that these characters are brought to life in the real and authentic way. And I love that they're actually leaning into this, because in all these are like projects that I have attachments to, because World of Frozen, I did a video on YouTube. Shanghai Zootopia, I did a video on YouTube. And as a part of my research for those, I kind of learned a little bit about how Walt Disney Animation Studios worked alongside Imagineering, and like no one ever talks about it. There's such a close connection and relationship with animation and Imagineering, and I love that they're actually like leaning into it and talking about it, because there's so much love that goes into, you know, making these characters. And even like with Tiana's now, how like they are making Tiana and Louis and Mama Odie in like that 3D, you know, current modern animation for the first time. So, like I said, this is like the one thing I'm sad I'm missing. Like I saw this, I'm like, damn it. But I'm hoping that I can find someone who's going to it and is willing to record the audio of it, just so I could listen to it. I don't care about seeing it. I just want to listen to it. But this one, I really love that they're doing it, And it's kind of like a branch of another parks panel, so to say, because like if they were to talk about this during a parks panel, I'd be like, yeah, that's awesome, because it's actually talking about the projects directly. But I think that this is a perfect example of they're doing it right in the time and the place. Rather than taking up time from the main presentation, they're actually allowing the people to work on these things to do an entire presentation on their own. And when you're talking about 3 major land expansions and one of the most, important reimaginings of an attraction ever with Tiana's, why wouldn't you talk about it? So I love that they actually acknowledged it and are doing it, because the people that work, at animation never get any credit for what they do with Imagineering. It seems like it's always WDI. So to see those people actually have a chance to talk about what they work on, heck yeah.
And I have to actually add on to that, what Drew was mentioning, that a lot of these smaller panels sometimes hit the bigger gusto than a lot of the actual like showcased panels, because I remember a lot of people when they walked out of the parks presentation, the last one, and they were so disappointed, like with the what ifs, shoulda, coulda, maybes, ifs, ands, buts, whatever you want to call it. And then the people that actually went to the Muppet Christmas Carol anniversary show, they said that show was so spectacular, and they said you missed a hell of a show with the Muppet Christmas Carol. And people are like, yeah, I know, we got to sit through listening to Tomorrow for like over an hour saying things that might happen. And so there are certain panels that I think that kind of hit a little bit more stronger, because Drew, you're right, because it taps into, when you read the title of what the presentation is about, that's all they're talking about. Mm-hmm. They don't segue off into anything else. They don't open up with a big musical number or what have you. It's like you're there to kind of listen to and like an intimate portrait of a conversation between these people that know the best. And I agree with you. This one is actually very interesting because as OG, you have mentioned so many times, you can't have nothing implemented into the parks without any of the studio.
The studio animation fuels the entire machine. The entire machine, and more now than ever. I mean, really more now than ever. Now that they're so heavily reliant on IP, the studio is so important,
Yeah, especially when like you have the original people that worked on some of these films, like being able to bring their talents and like creating an animatronic for the first time. Like that's so neat. And I hope that they actually show like some behind the scenes, like, because like a lot of the time what they'll do is like to give the presenters like a break, to get a drink of water or something. They'll segue into like a video showing a behind the scenes thing that's never been shown before. So if they actually show like some never before seen behind the scenes talking about World of Frozen, Fantasy Springs, Zootopia, and Tiana's, I would happily send that presentation over the parks presentation any day. Because not only do I find this more interesting personally, the more detailed stuff, because I'm super detail oriented, which you guys probably have no clue about at this point. The parks presentation is live streamed, and then Disney Parks blog releases everything anyway. So like me over here in Florida, I'm not really missing anything in regards to that, but that I'm missing. So that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, well said. Well said. The third panel or third pavilion is Dreams Chasing 4 Decades with Walt Disney Imagineering. Join Leslie Iwerks, Bob Weiss, and Wendy Lefcon for an intimate conversation spanning 4 decades of creating Imagineering projects from Anaheim to Paris, Tokyo to Shanghai. Audiences will be inspired to believe any dream we're doing is worth chasing. This is interesting because Bob Weiss, he's no longer with Imagineering. He went over to Gensler, right? I believe.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. That's actually good to see Bob come back. Yeah. It shows that he still has a good relationship with Disney, which is encouraging. I like that.
And a huge fan of his. I mean, what he did for Imagineering and everything, that he actually became like the head of it at one point after coming off of the project in Shanghai and what have you. I mean, he definitely earned his title for sure before he ended up leaving the company. So I was actually very surprised at that, but I'm very happy to see, that there's no sour notes between him and the company. And as far as Leslie Iwerks go, I'm a huge fan of hers. I love her. Yeah. I love her documentaries. I mean, her family tree is nothing small, than
never heard of them.
Yeah, never. But what say you, Drew?
Yeah, I think it kind of piggybacking on what I said about the previous one, I would much rather sit in this presentation and actually listen to the man that was with Walt Disney Imagineering for 40 years. Think about I'm turning 22 next month. He was at Imagineering almost twice as long as I've been on this planet.
Oh wow.
That's information that you can't get like once these people pass away. And I hate to say that, but like these presentations are so important because there's only so many times where they're actually like out here in the public talking about these things on a public stage. So to hear someone like Bob Weiss, who has such an incredible history at the company, like, yeah, I want to listen to that. Like that's so cool that they're actually like embracing his career. And it's not like Imagineering as a whole. It's literally just Bob Weiss. And I think that says all you need to know about the man, that he's that important to the company that one dude can have an entire presentation. And like you said, George, I love that they're doing this with Leslie because I feel like they have a very close connection, and I feel like they're kind of connected with a lot of things that they do publicly now. So yeah, that one's really cool. And like some of these surprise things that we didn't know about were coming. But to see him not only get to talk about his career, but then kind of lead that into the book release. I guess the one thing with that I'm not kind of worried about missing is because he wrote an entire book. So whenever that book comes out later this year, I can just buy the book. But I guess nothing beats seeing someone in person.
Yeah, well said, well said. Next one is the costuming artistry behind Disney experiences. Join Disney Live Entertainment costume designers as they share the design, inspiration, creative process, and up-close details behind costumes worn at Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Disney Cruise Lines, and more. George, what do you think, man? Is this interesting to you, or is this not your cup of tea?
It's not something that I would actually jump to like, oh my gosh, I want to go see this over some of the other presentations. Although I will say these people are just as much important as anybody else that is in the industry, because when you think of, oh, okay, they're costume designers. Okay, they make the costumes, but you have to think when it comes to, cast members, when it comes to audio animatronics, all those little details that are in the costuming, really plays a part in the storyline. And even Disney legend and one of the 9 old men, Mark Davis, his wife Alice Davis was a huge contributor in the costume design for the audio animatronics for It's a Small World and Pirates of the Caribbean. And so so when you kind of like tap into a person who is then creating not just a costume for a person to wear or an audio animatronic to wear, but all eyes are going to be on that as people go into the parks day in and day out. That's a lot of responsibility. And honestly, I think the fact that they get their own kind of showcase presentation so they can be recognized too, I think is awesome.
Yeah, I completely agree. The artistry, the costuming artistry, but the artistry, like, with the costuming is sort of like people take that for granted. I think a lot. They go to Disneyland and they see these costume characters and what have you, and they take it for granted because it's like the norm now. But like, there's a lot of work that goes into creating those costumes, and they do a phenomenal job. I don't think anyone does like costuming and characters like Disney. I mean, it's
not even close.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So
adding on to what George said, I had a really cool opportunity to go on the Keys to the Kingdom tour at Magic Kingdom. And part of that tour is they made it very clear that like whenever we went down to the Utilidors, which is the area, under Main Street, like the little secret tunnels. But our tour guide was like, this is an active room where they are working on the costumes. And if people are disrespectful in here on this tour, then we can't go in here anymore. So like, be on your best behavior. Like, she was like very adamant on that. But for like 30 seconds, we got to walk through the costuming room underneath Cinderella Castle. And that was one of the coolest, like, that's like the core memory I have, one of the core memories from that Keys to the Kingdom tour, because we actually got to see like a little bit of the process of what goes on behind the scenes every single day, just to where, Belle can wear her costume whenever she needs to. And it's almost like a near 24/7 thing, because like they'll have like issues with the costumes, and they showed us like the emergency rack where like they need to prioritize these things. And then like if an issue happened with this one, but it's not as urgent, then they move to that one. But just like seeing them work on the costumes, like there was like so cool. And there was like a little like they had like one of the little Grogu dolls, like with the little like outfit on, like a miniature outfit that they'd hand done. And then right as we walked out, they had one of like Cinderella's dresses, like kind of like the thing for the tour. But like you said, George, it's really cool to see them actually like appreciate this, because I'm very big on appreciating the people who don't get the spotlight, so to say. Like there's those Imagineers that we know because they get put in the spotlight because of their roles. But without, the people working below them, I don't want to say below them, but like the people working with them, without them, their creative vision never comes to life. So every little piece of the puzzle has to happen for these things to become a reality. So to see someone say, hey, let's do a presentation on the people who aren't appreciated, yes, please do.
Well said. Well said.
And unlike me, that I'll push people out of the way to put myself in the spotlight because I'm an attention whore. So
yeah, right, exactly.
Get him out of here.
Get him out of here. And then we have the Magic After Dark, the story of Disney's nighttime spectaculars. Fireworks above the castle became an iconic, quote, kiss goodnight at Disneyland. And every Disney park has filled the night with light, music, water, and fire. Join Disney's nighttime magicians to hear the stories behind your favorite After Dark shows. I love.
Oh, is that Disney... what it's about?
I love the Disney. I love the Disney.
All I saw was Magic After Dark. I got excited, and that's completely what I thought.
Nice. No, but yeah, I love the nighttime spectaculars. I mean, they are, for me. I'm not even really so much. I mean, I do like the rides and the attractions, but there's something about like standing on Main Street, or even like for World of Color. And everything just comes alive. There, I get goosebumps like 90% of the time watching this stuff. So this is an interesting panel.
And I do love how they still consider it as the kiss goodnight, because that's what was the terminology of Walt. And actually, going back to Drew's earlier statement with Disneyland 60th, the Diamond Celebration, where the one and only, the brilliant Richard Sherman wrote the song Kiss Goodnight for the end of Disneyland Forever. So, I mean, that just kind of sums it all up to what really the fireworks, you know, you could go anywhere to see fireworks, but there's only one kind of Disney fireworks, you know.
Yeah, Disney fireworks, like, they ruin you for any other fireworks show.
Yeah,
like,
we've been spoiled.
Oh, so spoiled. Like in our area, we have like these 4th of July shows and stuff, and it's like,
I'm like, yeah, I go and see it. I'm like, this is janky. Like,
it's like, come on, this is not. It's not. Yeah, it's not like in sync with the music.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I hate not to cut you off. But like my dad and I were talking, like, why do people get excited for fireworks? I'm like, it probably doesn't help that, you know, like I can walk outside the house at 9:20 every night and, you know, casually watch Happily Ever After. That's like 4 miles away. So definitely have been spoiled there.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, you guys have a fantastic fireworks show. I've only been in Walt Disney World one time, you know.
My hot take is that Enchantment is better than Happily Ever After. That's my hottest take.
What?
Really?
Wow.
Really? Okay. Wait. We're gonna come back to this, but you were gonna say, OG, that you were gonna say about Happily Ever After.
Oh no, you guys have a fantastic show. I mean, that was one of my favorite. We went to Florida my first time last summer, almost exactly a year ago, and George and I were standing there watching the show, and I was just goosebumps the whole time.
Yeah,
it's absolutely beautiful. I loved it. You know.
Okay, now Drew, I'm going to try to be as respectful as possible with this question, but why on?
All right, so Disneyland Foods yesterday, tomorrow.
Okay, so I'm intrigued. Like, what made you gear towards Enchantment over Happily Ever After?
So it's more of like a personal experience rather than like which show is better, so to say.
Okay.
But with me kind of growing up with the parks, like before we moved out here, I was always so focused on going on to as many rides as possible because that was like my thing. I didn't really start to appreciate like the nighttime spectaculars, like the fireworks shows and the parades, until after the parks reopened in 2020 and they were gone. And then I started to miss them. Once they came back, then I started to appreciate them because I was like, oh, these things are important. And also just the fact that I got older and started to mature a little bit and I started to care less about the rides and kind of more about the atmosphere and environment of the parks as a whole. So like when Wishes went away and when Illuminations went away, I never really had an attachment to them because I never watched them. I was more focused on going on the rides. So like when Happily Ever After debuted in 2017, I never really watched it. Like I'd hear it in the background, but I'd never go out of my way to watch it. Whereas Enchantment debuted in 2021 after I started to develop that attachment to these shows. So Enchantment and Harmonious were like the first shows that like when they kind of were in the development and we started getting those details on them, I followed those from the beginning. And also when it comes to like the Magic Kingdom shows, Happily Ever After's projections didn't get upgraded when it came back. So they're still blurry if you're in like the front of the castle. Whereas Enchantment's projections were crystal clear. So every time I watched Enchantment, I would always go up to the very front and I'd be in awe of the projections, you know, and how they were incorporated with like the 50th anniversary decorations. So I think I appreciate Enchantment more of a projection show, kind of with the fireworks as a background, like literally a background behind the castle. Whereas I feel like a lot of people in general, like the majority of Disney fans, I'm definitely in the minority on this. They care more about the thing as a whole, like the music mixed with the fireworks. Whereas with Enchantment, I specifically watched it for the music and the projections over the fireworks. So when it comes to me as a Parks fan, the things that I enjoy, my enjoyment of these shows is much different, and that's why I love Enchantment more. It's because I was watching it for the projections and the music over the fireworks.
Nice.
Okay.
But like I said,
yeah.
I'm in the minority on that because most people care about kind of taking a step.
Oh,
back.
absolutely. You're completely wrong. Yeah, definitely.
All right, leave studio. No, just kidding.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that's
I like that because go ahead, George.
Oh, no, really quick. But I was just going to say, because sometimes it doesn't really necessarily go by who is the popular kid in school, so to speak. It goes by each individual's own personal experience. And at the end of the day, that's all that should matter. Mm-hmm. If that person is having a good time or they have a connection with something, it shouldn't matter what majority rules it to say, okay, that doesn't necessarily resonate with me, so you should feel the same way too. So I definitely I can understand.
And also a part of my love for Enchantment came when they added that intro with Walt and Roy kind of honoring the 50 years of Disney. Like once that debuted and I actually started to watch it more for the projections, because that literally was the projection upgrade. It was added to add the projections and to kind of add them in like a physical way. I loved Enchantment a lot more because of that. But like I have a video on my phone right here. Like I would literally go up to the very front of the castle and like the castle looked good. Like those projections were incredible. And I tie my love for Walt Disney World's 50th back to Enchantment and Harmonious because I loved both of those shows. But like I said, I'm well aware I'm in the minority on those, but it's just because I look at these things differently than most people do. And I have a different appreciation for it. So
yeah, that works. That works. Yeah, I have an appreciation for the electrical parade, and a lot of Californians, they don't like the parade anymore because it's like it's old, and they always bring it back, and it's like this whole thing. And I love it, but
it's classic.
I love it's classic. It's such a like an iconic parade, and it was one of my late grandmother's favorite things. So it's always going to have that specialness to me. Yeah. So I see what you're saying, Drew. Where like certain things like.
I mean, it even goes back to why I have this poster behind me. I literally had a one-of-one experience with what I did with Tiana's. So it's like if people just go on it, they're going on it for a fun ride. It was where I'm going on it to experience the attraction that I spent 5 months of my life documenting. It's like everyone's going to have their own little attachments to things. And I think that kind of comes back to like a bigger picture with the Disney parks and like how cool they are that there's so many different unique things. And kind of comes back to what we were talking about earlier, like with all these new expansions. Whenever they do, these new things and these unique things, it adds more unique experiences and more people are going to be able to enjoy them as a result of necessarily cloning something, because that's going to keep that same audience. More people might be able to experience it, but it's still that same thing. Whereas if you go with something brand new, then introduces a brand new audience. So that's how I think.
Well said. 60 years of Disney ambassadors, the stories you've never heard. Take a trip down memory lane with Disney's ambassadors who have been part of the 60-year legacy started by Walt Disney, as they share favorite moments ranging from unforgettable to the unforeseeable. Who's the first Disney ambassador? Was it Julie? George, I'm sure you know this. She was with Walt Disney.
The Wall and the Pirates of the Caribbean thing, right?
Yeah. Wait. Oh gosh.
I'm cheating. I'm Googling it.
Yeah, please cheat because I know it, but she's like on the tip of my tongue.
I know the face. I don't know the name. Yeah, Julie Castelletto. Is that?
Yeah.
Julie Ream Castelletto?
Oh yeah, Julie Ream. Okay. Yeah, that's her.
Yep.
That's her. Yeah. So she was lovely. She was great. And she was in that, like you were saying, Drew, that famous
on the Disney Connect site, there's the picture of Walt.
There she is.
Yes. Did the little tour with Walt.
Yep. So what say you, George? Do you like this? Is this interesting to you or is it...
So here's the thing. I think if they have some compelling stories, to talk about, I think that would be very interesting. I love how they're showcasing the whole entire 60 years of ambassadors. Because again, a lot of people, unless they're Disney nerds like us that have the appreciation, but a lot of the normies don't really know, like, what's it, a Disney ambassador? Like, what is that? It's like, but for us, it's like, yeah, we would love to dive into, like the stories that maybe they know and the connections that they have gained by becoming ambassadors. So I think it'd be kind of interesting. Again, is this something that I would jump at the chance to? There's some other things that I would prefer to do instead.
So I think that I like seeing this ambassador thing because at Destination D23 last year in September, they had like an ambassador showdown. And like, I think one of the funniest moments was they said they had all the ambassadors here from worldwide, even Kanoa Kanai, who was the ambassador for Alani at the time. Literally everyone, they had him up on stage. I'll never forget this moment. It's one of my favorite stories to tell. But they just thinking about it is making me laugh. And this was like a year ago. But they had an ambassador showdown, all of them up on stage, like I said. And one of the questions they asked them is, who has the best castle? And all the ambassadors were like giving their reasons on why they had the best castle. And then they get to Kanoa, who was the ambassador of Alani. And everyone's like, what is he going to do? And he had a little sand castle on the beach of Alani. And it was one of the funniest things that I have ever... The entire room, thousands of people, we were just all dying. And that was just like one of the coolest things. Because like the ambassadors are cast members and they just like make their way up through the company. And like they're ambassadors because they're like the cream of the crop of cast members. They have like the best personalities. And even the Walt Disney World ambassadors right now, Serena and Shannon, I've gotten to know them really well through Tiana's. And I just saw them yesterday at the Country Bear event. And I was talking to them about like the Essence Festival and how they were out there promoting Tiana's with the Imagineers and Anika. And they're just cast members, but they do it at the highest level. And they, like I said, they have the best personalities. So the fact that they're doing this allows them to show their personalities together. And when you bring them together, I'm hoping that will deliver on another funny moment. Like, we were all looking at each other like, what do you mean Alani doesn't have a castle? And then he drops this hilarious photo of a sand castle right in front of the gorgeous resort.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I'm sure that there's a video out there somewhere that you guys could look up of the ambassador showdown. I really hope there is, because that was like I said, one of the funniest moments ever. And it's just one of those core memories that you never forget. So to see them actually get to talk about their stories, not only as people, but kind of just honoring this thing that Walt started, I love that. And kind of like what George hinted at earlier before I turned purple, not necessarily something that I'd prioritize, but the fact that it's there is so cool because there's enough people attending this expo to where you can fill up a room like that, and the people there are going to have a great time. So I love that they do that for that reason.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Absolutely. And our last and final thing is Disneyland Foods. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, thanks to Walt Disney himself, dining has always been an essential part of the Disneyland experience. Join the Disneyland Resort chefs and Pam Brandon, co-author of the official Disney Parks Cookbook series, to learn about the early days of the Disneyland food scene, today's methods for concept creation and menu development of fan favorites, and a look towards the result's culinary future. George, I know you you are a expert on those. What were those drinks that you had at DCA? They got you kind of the Italian. Or at Naples, I'm sorry.
Oh,
the
Naples.
Italian.
Yeah, the Italian margarita.
There you go. You're an expert on those. You could probably write a book on those. You took down like 5 of them.
It was 4. Yeah, it was during their margarita happy hour. So I knocked on four of those, and I thought it was a good idea to head back into DCA and ride Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters. So
yeah, exactly.
I want to go on that ride so bad. I cannot wait to go.
It's so fun. I tell you what, like with Cars Land, everyone loves Radiator Springs Racers. I love Radiator Springs Racers.
Yeah,
but there's just something about Mater's Junkyard Jamboree and Luigi's Rollicking Roadsters that they're simple, but they're just so fun. They have to put a smile on your face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, they're fun. Yeah. Well, it did put a smile on our good friend Alia. You and her went on it.
Oh my gosh, she could not stop laughing because she was literally. She said, "Why do we even need seatbelts for this thing?" And then it's like jerking us around and swinging us and spinning us. And she's like, "Oh, now I see why we got seatbelts." And like she's trying to hold on to her mouse ears and she's laughing hysterically, and I'm laughing at her laughing. And it was just a good time.
And that's what Disney's all about. At the end of the day, that's what Disney is all about. Just having fun with friends and family like that. I love that. It's beautiful. You know.
Agreed.
Yeah. What say you, Drew, about the Disneyland foods yesterday, today, and tomorrow?
Yeah, like even this is probably the one thing that I wouldn't have any interest in. When it comes to food at Disney, I have no interest. Like I feel like a lot of it's just like FOMO, like with social media these days.
Totally.
And it's like because people are like, oh, new food item. Let me go drop $27 on this because I need to post it on Instagram.
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
If it's your job, like so with Suri and I work for a living by Disney, like we cover food stuff, but that's because this is literally her job, and we know that it's not necessarily what we care about; it's what people are interested in who are traveling here. So, do I understand why people do it? Yes. Is it something that I would sit in during a presentation? It would be like the last thing I would do if I had nowhere to go. But like out of respect for the people that work on these foods, I understand that a lot of it's very fun. I'm not against it by any means, just not me. I care more about the entertainment and the rides.
I think it's funny that you say that because I have a little pet peeve about that too. When you have these people that, like if it's their actual job to cover, like if they're food critics or they are actual photographers and they're trying to, or what have you.
That's a perfect example too. It's like, how do you present it? Like if I went to go buy, if I went to Magic Kingdom tomorrow and I bought the Tiana's foods for the opening and I took professional quality photos of the food and shared it, hey, this is available, this is what it looks like, and I presented it in a professional format, I think that's one thing rather than saying, beignets, it's just the standard that I like to hold myself to, and food has never been and quite honestly, it's always so hot out here in Florida, I never have an appetite in the parks. Like my parents will always yell at me, like, why aren't you eating at the parks? I'm like, because I feel sick when I'm out there in the heat sometimes, so it's like I just don't want to spend $13 on chicken tenders not to finish the food, Well,
and then you have the people that have no experience of what it is whatsoever, and they put a camera in front of themselves and they become this connoisseur, they know all the rich flavors, and it's like, please.
I love the candied bacon on the no, just shut up.
It's like, come on.
I don't care, I'll go eat it myself and taste it myself if I want it that badly.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with it too. I'll just go try it. If I want it, I'll go try it, But yeah, you're right though, Drew. There's a lot of this FOMO kind of Instagram culture out there with all that stuff.
And I know it probably sounds hypocritical because we do social media, but I think that the way we try to present ourselves is a more professional standard and actually trying to get, information to people. And we've been talking for 2 hours and 9 minutes right now, but we've been talking about actual, information,
right.
kind of actually looking at the descriptions for these shows and talking about, this presentation being a musical, so to set your expectations accordingly, and things that people aren't talking about. So for us to talk about those things, I feel that is valuable rather than hey, I've got beignets, look at me type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, fascinating conversation, Drew. It's always a pleasure having you on. We always have a blast.
It's cool. The last time I was on, we talked for 2 hours and 17 minutes. Today we talked for 2 hours and 10 minutes. So I think we can start nicknaming our conversations movie length at this point.
Oh, yeah, easily. Yeah, and actually, by the time we kind of close it out today and everything, we'll get pretty close to that 217. So
I take that as a good sign though, because I was familiar with what you guys did before I came on last month to talk about Tiana's, but I feel like we just naturally clicked on how we talk and the way we think about things. There's just I wouldn't say that there's so much negativity because from my personal experience, I'll get the few nasty comments, but when I look at the like rate to the nastiness, it's still positive overall. But there is just a ton of negativity out there on social media, online, Twitter mostly, which is ironic because that's my main platform. But I guess it's all about how you handle things and present yourself with things, and you guys do a good job with it. So
thank you.
We wouldn't be talking for 2 hours and plus if it wasn't like that. If we didn't get along and didn't think similarly and had valuable thoughts and the way we think about these things. So it all comes back to that.
And you have a great personality too, and that's what makes it click.
It's fun.
If you could still talk about stuff, get the information out, but we could still kind of just throw ideas out, goof around. Yeah, it's just buddies hanging out.
Because that's the thing is it's something that I've been thinking about recently is on my Twitter, I usually will post things that I think people will be interested in, and also things that I am usually positive towards because that's what I'm interested in. So it's kind of created a narrative, so to say, that what I post is positive. Whereas if someone was to say there's this entire thing, they'd actually see a lot of the things that I'm critical on and giving feedback on.
Yeah.
But when people just go into my comments and they throw a nasty comment, they don't know anything about me. They just see one of my posts and they're like, oh, there's that redhead kid again with the orange profile picture. He's been talking about this for 6 months, so he's a shill. Whereas if they'd actually come on here, they'd actually see how I really think about things, and that I think Communicore Hall is one of the saddest things that's happened to Walt Disney World. And that original festival center being lost is really sad. And, if this does turn into a musical with the announcements, on the downside rather than the main thing, that would be something that I'm extremely disappointed in. And that, we need to be holding Walt Disney Imagineering to the highest standard because of how expensive these things are. And the fact that they've been around for 70 years now and that they have the technology, and we just need these people that are creative to be allowed to be creative. And that's why we are critical, because we care about these parks and this company so much. And when it's not living up to the standard that needs to be, why would we be be proud of that and, applaud it. Like you said, literally applaud it.
And honestly, if that is the case where this whole parks presentation is nothing but one big musical, they should just axe the Horizons title and just call it It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow.
Tomorrow the musical.
Tomorrow the musical.
I would say I actually would think it'd be brilliant because like Josh has a good personality. I've talked to Josh a few times. I like Josh a lot. Like I look up to him as a leader, and I think he's a good leader. But like this presentation is a big part of his legacy, and everyone is aware of that. But I think that something I was talking recently with Gavin, who I work with at Mickey Visit, is like he wrote this in the article on Mickey Visit. They need to lean into the humor. Like you can be professional and you can be an executive and a leader while also, poking fun at, these last few years haven't been ideal for the company. And, that Tron took 5 years to be built. So if like Josh comes out on stage and starts poking fun at the company and has some fun and maybe, pops back on stage and dances, like that makes it worth it at that point. If they start to, the humor is tied into it.
And that's where Tom Staggs had a knack at.
So good. Yes,
he was so good at that. I remember when they did it was a Star Wars event thing at Disneyland where they supposedly Staggs was in the Jedi cloak, but it didn't show his face.
Yeah.
And he was doing all like stunts with the lightsaber, and then he goes back.
He was good too.
And he came out and he was like pulling off the Jedi robe, and he was like, "Whew, man, that was a workout," or something like that. Like he just like he.
And Josh has that personality, and like he's done some fun things. Like he did the Muppets, but sometimes it feels like stuff happens below him, and they're like, "Hey, Josh, this is what we've played, and you're doing it," and he feels like a little awkward with it. And I understand when you're talking to like a puppet being controlled by a person, there's going to be some awkwardness to it. But like one of the things, for example, that I liked is when they introduced that Duke Weaselton animatronic out of nowhere. You guys in Shanghai when they did that press event, and Duke rolled on stage and Josh was talking to him. Like that was fun. There was a little bit of that awkwardness, but like Duke is talking to him. He's like, "Hey, I've got people here. I got to talk to him." So like they were leaning into that it was a press event and that he was there to present, Zootopia. But at the same time, you're debuting this incredible Duke Weaselton robot, which is something that I want to talk about soon, like the future of the parks that Josh has been big on, bringing these characters to life in this authentic way, kind of like what we've seen with Project Exo and Project Kiwi and Duke and like the droids at Disneyland. Right now, they play tested them and now they're at Disneyland. There's a lot of stuff there that no one's talking about that I think that the future of the parks is going to be a lot of these characters, but in natural ways. Don't steal my idea on that. Thankfully, this is at the end of this, so I don't think as many people will see it. But just lean into that. Like, have some of those fun moments. And I think that, like, I've always thought about, like, if they, like, messed up a presentation, like, while Josh is talking, like, throw up a piece of concept art that we've never seen before and say it's an accidental reveal, but then tie that into the actual announcement. Like, put it up early, but it wasn't supposed to be up early. It's all a part of the presentation. There's so many fun things to do these presentations, and kind of like what you were saying earlier, Chris, Disney's all about having fun. So why would you lean so hard into the professional side of it and make it more like PR?
See, and no fun. Sorry, no offense to Josh, but that's why I would be perfect for chairman of the parks, BT, because I'd be up on that stage every single time, and I'd be killing it. I tell people all the time, I have no shame. And I don't care. It's like, give me a mic, a podium, and an arena of 50,000 people. I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and here's the thing too. You make a great point there, Drew, where you talk about like, kind of make fun a little bit. If Josh D'Amaro got up there, right, and he sort of poked fun at someone like, hey, the last 5 years we understand they haven't been great, and would make jokes about it, right? Or how long
I feel like a lot of people would respect him for that too. But
absolutely. Oh, they would absolutely respect them for it. And then also it takes some of the sting out, right? For example, like, I don't know if you guys saw 8 Mile with Eminem, but like one of the tactics that Eminem used in these rap battles was he would kind of diss himself. Like, yeah, I live with my mom. Yeah, I live in a trailer. I'm white trash, this, that, and the other. And then by the time the other guy, it was his turn, he had no attack on Eminem because Eminem kind of made fun of himself. Yeah. Same idea here with Tomorrow. If you can kind of poke fun at yourself in the situation, last time I did a lot of blue sky, and make a joke of it, it takes a little bit of the ammo out of your critics. You know what I'm saying? It'd be the smart move. You're on something with that, Drew. I think maybe you should kind of lean into that a little bit, joke around about it.
Yeah,
make a blue sky joke. Yeah,
they can make these presentations. They just make them so fun. Like the blue sky joke. Like, what if Josh walked out on stage and the sky was blue, and he's like, "Why is that screen blue?" Just like it's like literally like a picture of a blue sky on the screen rather than like the title card. It could be like that a joke about me? You know, just like little things like that, where you'd have the entire 12,000 thing laughing. Every single person would be laughing, and that starts it off with like a bang to where everyone would be in a happy mood at that point, rather than being like, "Is this going to be what I want it to be?" And
Exactly.
I think if this was a comedy mixed in with announcements, that would be much more of what the Walt Disney Company is about, rather than a musical. Because like that's more of like a Broadway thing, or like a live entertainment thing in the parks that like we've been talking about. There's a time and a place for that. And if that's their priority, to make this a show rather than a panel, like I guess that, could you describe it that way? A show versus a presentation? Would that be the right way to describe it?
Absolutely.
I think it needs to be like what Chapek did. This is where I liked Chapek a lot. He just presented. He said things as they were. He was the one who said, you know, design once, build twice. He literally just said it as it is. And, you know, I think that you can have respect from your fans if you say things as they are, because we see through a lot of the things that they say, because we're, you know, a lot of it's, you know, just PR, and we can see through that. But also just have fun with it, because that's what Disney's all about. You know, we don't go to Disney to be serious while we're walking down Main Street. We go to Disney to have fun and laugh on these roller coasters. So why not have fun with your main presentation while you're talking about the things that are going to make people laugh, you know, once they're built?
Oh, absolutely.
But not me. I strictly go to the parks just to be done right miserable. Like literally, like I'll just like walk like down Main Street, and it's like, who let all these kids in here? It's like, why? Like,
yeah. George brings a laptop.
How dare
they? George brings a laptop so he can work on some Excel spreadsheets, right, George? I
do. Like, I'll just like I'll like go around, and it's like why is that light bulb loose? Like, why is that chip of paint like scraped off on the bottom? It's like I got to zoom in with my lens.
That's great.
Like, how many layers of paint got chipped off? Like, I just go around, I just obliterate the whole thing.
Yeah, but no, we're rooting to kind of wrap it up on a big bow. Like, I think we are rooting for Josh. We hope he crushes it. It's good for him, obviously, but it's also great for the fans. You know, I mean, we really want to just be excited for this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And just get pumped. And that's why
we have to be critical more than ever. It's not negativity. It's constructive criticism and valid feedback. Because like even Walt Disney Imagineering talks about those things. Like, they're not going to deliver on everything, and people aren't going to love everything that they do, but giving them that feedback actually allows them to build and grow on it and accept that feedback and then make things better in the future. So like you guys have been saying, if you're literally applauding these numbers just to do it, like kind of smiling through the pain, so to say, that it's like you're the one spending $400 to be there. Why are you clapping? You know, there's no obligation to clap. Tell it how it is.
Exactly.
Nothing. It's nothing against the performers in these musical numbers. You know, the people are putting a lot of love into it, but it needs to be presentation over show.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said.
We will find out here very, very soon. But I guess, like you said, to wrap it all up, when I was looking at, when you guys told me this is what we're talking about tonight, and you know, a lot of people were looking at that piece of art, like we talked about, you know, with the icons rather than what's in the center, and Mickey with the, you know, his little wand, you know, being a conductor. I'm like, this is lining up a little too eerily with the description. I'm not a fan of that.
And especially since that was the main title. And then it's like, oh, yeah. And then, by the way, we're also going to be talking about park stuff, too.
Oh. I didn't even pick up on that. And you're right, Drew. You're right.
I am the Disney dude.
You are. You are the Disney dude. And that's the thing. Like, the musical stuff, okay, a song here, a song there. But when the artwork is centered around music with the conductor Mickey, the verbiage in there, oh man!
See, it's not just one verbiage thing. It's the tweet on Twitter. It's the parks blog post. It's the thing on the D23 site twice. Like they are hammering down that this is a musical celebration of Disney experiences. And like I've said, that art, it looks like Mickey is conducting the parks. And I mean, I love the horizons, because this should be like what we're going to see on the horizon with the parks. But like, I think, like we talked about, you know, we've talked about this all so much, but if those announcements are so big to where when Josh walks off stage and goes to take his break, that musical number is okay, to where we're kind of smiling, that's fine. But like with last year with Destination D, when Josh walked off stage and I saw more Muppets, I'm like, this is, you know, an hour-long thing and we're going to spend 30 minutes with Muppets? No.
No, exactly. Unless you're building us the great Muppet movie ride, we don't need that much time with Muppets. You know.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, we've covered what we needed to, and we've got our points across. So now we just have to wait and see. And with how fast time's going, I went on Tiana's for the first time 5 weeks ago. That does not feel real. Okay. Yeah,
that is wild.
Okay, now speaking of that, I have to ask. This is going to be completely, totally off topic, but I wanted to get your thing on it. It was mentioned that Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Tron are going to be removed from virtual queue during the holiday seasons. I'm assuming Halloween in through Christmas. So what is your overall take on that? That being that there's now going to be several things that are going to be closed for refurbishment. Like Peter Pan's flight got extended, I believe, to 6 weeks.
Yeah,
6 weeks.
It's down right now as we're recording this.
Okay, so what's your take on that? Do you see that as a strategy on Disney's part, or do you think that they use that as an opportunity to kind of keep them off of virtual queue, but utilizing that the holidays are going to be more successful during than the summer months?
So initially, my first thought was that's a selling point. Be like, oh, standby line. But to be fair, Disney did say with Tiana's they don't expect it to be on a virtual queue for a long time. It doesn't need to be. My gut feeling is that Tiana's was already supposed to go to a standby line on July 8th when Peter Pan went down. Not only is that the day that Peter Pan went down, but that was also the first Monday after the 4th of July. So you're literally after the 4th, you're after that weekend, and it would have been the perfect thing to transition it. I think that the technical difficulties for Tiana's is pushing it back a little bit. My hope is that Tiana's is going to transition to a standby line on July 17th once Country Bears opens to actually add some capacity to the park. When you have a standby line for Tiana's and you actually have a couple hundred people by Country Bears, that's going to take some of the people out of the walkways, which is a good thing. This is a photo from yesterday of the Tiana line. Not a single person in the extended queue for Tiana's under a virtual queue. There's not a single person there. That's yesterday. So when you're looking at Tiana's being handcuffed by this virtual queue, I'm not a fan of it at all. If it was having these 3-hour downtimes still, would I understand it? Yes. But right now, as of today, I think it's gone 8 days in a row where they've called over 140 groups. So the issues are still persisting a little bit after opening day, like some of the animatronic things and a little bit of downtime. It didn't get magically resolved. But it has been 5 weeks now, and we've seen it operate for over a week, where it's actually been operating consistently, where I got to go on it twice yesterday and I didn't have to worry about it going down. Like I could actually relax. I feel like for that first month, every time I'd go to get in line, in the back of my mind, I'd be like, is it going to go down? And am I going to have to be here for 4 hours? But yesterday, I actually just got to go on it. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's been fine for a week. We'll be good. Which it did. And today, I still think it went through like 150 groups. So the thing with standby that I will always say, standby increases capacity. It's not fun for anyone to wait in an hour plus long line. No one wants to do it. No one enjoys that. But when you have Tron and Tiana's having these lines that are built and no one's in those lines, that's keeping the other parts of the park busy. So when you're putting all these hundreds of millions of dollars into these rides, is it helping the park in any way? We need capacity. And
it surprises me that Tron and Cosmic Rewind are still under virtual
Cosmic
queue.
Rewind, I will say I'm fine with being on a virtual queue because the inside is so small. Like I honestly think that the best situation we'd ever see for Cosmic Rewind is a hybrid where most of the time it's going to be on a virtual queue. But if the park is super busy, then they could switch it to a standby line, which I know they did for Web Slingers for a very short period of time. That's the only time we've ever seen a hybrid queue.
Do you think that's Disney's concern with Cosmic Rewind?
I do 100% think that that's Cosmic Rewind's concern. Personally, I think the Cosmic Rewind's virtual queue could be permanent to an extent. The best we'll ever see is hybrid. Because the most that inside queue can hold is about 45 minutes before you were literally pushed outside into the heat in Florida, and that's miserable. I think that they need to do something like what they did with Toy Story Land and literally build an extended overhang with air conditioning and tons of fans outside, then transition it to a standby queue, but that would involve investment. Cosmic Rewind deserves that investment, one of the best attractions on the planet. But to answer your question about that, Cosmic Rewind, I don't think it's going to go off standby anytime soon.
Well, then again, the money that they saved off of Communicore. Here we go again.
There it is.
What? No. What the heck?
Okay, wait. Before you go off, OG, could you bring up the poster, Horizons poster?
Oh, I don't think I have it. I don't have it anymore. But let me see.
Okay.
Hold on one sec. Hold on.
What is it doing this for?
Because this is on brand at its finest.
I mean, Chris, at least you got to see it, so you know we aren't going crazy.
Yeah.
Like, why am I purple?
That is so weird. Okay,
at least I know I can fix it.
That is so weird.
This has to be posted on Twitter. This is the greatest right here.
There we go. Oh man, yeah.
Look at that.
Absolutely. That is wild, Drew.
I just got to do the pose now of Mickey.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be right back, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
There it goes. Yeah, that's wild. That's wild. So it's interesting stuff, man. Interesting stuff. I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we all are for the D23 fan event, but
yeah,
I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little nervous.
Now
you know?
I am. Now I am actually just a little bit. Here we go.
There it
Time's
is.
the charm. Let's
Yes.
go.
Oh, but I was just gonna finish. What I was gonna say was, well, now they actually might add those fans an extended queue for Cosmic Rewind.
They need
Now
to.
that they saved a lot of money off of Communicore Hall, you know that those funds could actually be put right into that line. So
There you go.
I don't want to talk about Communicore Hall out of respect for the people who worked on the project because I know that they were handcuffed. But going back to Tiana's, Tiana's needs to go to a standby line now. It's been operating mostly consistently, like I said, for over a week. Country Bears is opening on the 17th. Just switch it, drop it. It doesn't need it. Disney even said that they don't expect it to. The thing with Tron doesn't need it either because it has that canopy. It covers it, so you're not in the sun at any point. When Tron opened, I thought that it would be standby pretty quickly after because of that massive, walkway that leads up under the canopy, and there's more than enough room there to have a standby line. The thing with Tron, every single time I go on it, people are not the smartest, and they still don't know how to board these vehicles, or they quite literally don't fit in the vehicles, so that slows things down. I think the Tron is still on a virtual queue because of that, because it can never operate at its full capacity, and that is being caused by the guests not understanding how to board the vehicles, or people literally have to get off and then they have to go to the Rover, which is the accessible vehicle in the back. I love that they have the Rover. It's nice for everyone to be able to go on it, and that lap bar is more than accommodating. So I like that they have it, but that doesn't change the fact that it slows down the line. So if you're having a standby line and, that adds, if someone's at the back of the line by the time they get to the front, if that adds 10 to 15 minutes to their wait, it could. Could that be a reason why they're not, transitioning it to a standby line? Possibly. Tiana's doesn't need it though. They don't even check your lap bar by the time that you're dispatched. They just look at you through the cameras. They installed 2 new cameras for a new position cast member to see, and if your lap bar is not pulled down, they'll tell you. But it's pretty self-explanatory. They even changed the foam to orange so people see that it's orange and I need to pull this down. But yeah, my take, Tiana's needs to go to standby. It's ridiculous that it's still on a virtual queue now that's been operating consistently, and hopefully that will happen within the next week or so. So fingers crossed.
Nice. Well, it's good to see that while there's still some issues, it looks like it's more
getting better.
consistent. Yeah, that's good news. Good news. Well, the Italiano, if you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. And before I do, Drew, we passed the 2:17 mark, so that means the next time we got to hit 3 hours.
Yes.
We're gonna go full Avatar experience mode by doing a conversation the length of an Avatar movie.
Yes, let's do it. Let's do it.
But in the meantime, you can find me on social media on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. I'm going to start laughing every time I say that now. You can also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you can find me right here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There
I've
he
got the
is.
memo now.
You got the
There it is. There it is. And Drew, the Disney dude, always a pleasure having you on, brother. We
Man,
love
this was,
having you on.
2.5 hours flies by. That's a good sign. But yeah, Drew Disney Dude on X and Drew the Disney Dude on YouTube. I am going to start posting more on YouTube before hopefully something big happens later this year. And I need to get into the rhythm of posting again on YouTube. So I'm forcing myself to start uploading again so that can happen down the road. But yeah, Drew the Disney Dude, that's me.
There he is. Make sure you
Drew,
follow.
Drew the Bayou Bro. Drew the Bayou Bro too.
Oh, that's I like that.
Ooh,
I like that
I do
a
too.
lot.
I do too.
Drew the Bayou. I like
I
that.
can't take
dude.
credit for that. That's Zach at Boardwalk Times. He said that one day, and I'm like, "Yep, I'm."
I'll tell him it works.
It works. I
He's like,
really like
he'll
that.
message me. He's like, "Where's Drew the Bayou Bro going today?" I'm like, "You're on something here, Zach."
Yeah, absolutely. He's a cool guy.
He's
I've
very
never, I've only talked to him through Twitter, but
Yeah,
he's
me
really
Zach is Zach's got a good head on his shoulders. Very professional, very cool in person. So, I guess shout out to Boardwalk Times too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Drew, and thank you, Italiano, and thank you all for watching. Comment down below with everything we discussed today about the D23 Ultimate Fan Event. What are
All
your
right,
thoughts?
Josh, you're on 5 minutes. Musical starting now. Okay, what's up?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with all your opinions and thoughts. Thank you so much for watching this episode of OG50.